We got nobody watching, but people will show up. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
Hey, my name is King. If you don't know who I am, my name is Israel King. I'm a writer, director, and anime commentator on my main channel, King Tannic. Now, if you've been a fan of pop culture for any amount of time, then you surely must have noticed the sudden rise in popularity in anime and manga. Films breaking box office records, series topping the most pirated show of the year chart, and of course, the very apparent fan base that has surrounded it. According to a poll back in February of this year, about 50% of Gen Z watches anime. Now, if you're not Gen Z, it can be kind of hard not knowing anything about this new, sudden, very popular corner in the pop culture zeitgeist. And that's where we come in. King Tannic and the Burnettwork have partnered to bring you the best anime and manga related news show on YouTube. The Otaku Experience is your go-to place to find out the biggest stories of the week in the anime and manga industry. Still not convinced? Try the show out for yourself. The show airs Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time or 5 p.m. Eastern. The Otaku Experience, only on the Burnettwork.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination and the as yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm Rob casting at you, you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is, believe it or not, Robservations episode 863. Yeesh. Anyway, this is a special episode. You know that we have new programming here on the Burnettwork, and one of my favorite things, not just on this channel, but on any YouTube channel, is Lana Yuen's reviews. And she did a review this week of Tony Scott's The Hunger, which turned 40 in April, and it's a film that's near and dear to my heart. And I'm sorry I missed this monumental birthday for The Hunger. But to celebrate, well, you know what? What's better late than never? And to celebrate, I've got Lana Yuen herself and Alancinematic with me. Welcome, kids. Welcome to the show.
Hey,
Hello.
Thanks for having us. Hi, everyone.
Welcome to the program. You know, I have been quite impressed with the two of you. Like I said, you're my new favorite geek power couple, and you make great work together. And I think it's fantastic. And your collaboration, it touches my heart. And I've loved your journey into, there's a book called Psychotronic Cinema. I just call the kind of things you've been doing psychotronic. But I've loved your sort of deep dive into the last couple of decades of interesting cinema. And I like especially Lana, that you haven't seen a lot of these things, right?
That's right. Like none of them. They've all been brand new. I don't even know who most of these people are. So,
well, and you know, sometimes I've noticed that, you know, people sometimes will criticize you for that. And I'm like, you guys kind of aren't getting the point of the series, which is you're discovering these movies for the first time. And I think that that's part of what makes your reviews so much fun. And the fact that, you know, you are looking back, like for those of us who grew up with some of these movies, seeing we might have a little, the time things came out is different than now. And going back and looking at something from today's perspective, I find to be the most interesting things. I mean, one of my favorite things to watch on YouTube are reaction videos. and watching some 16-year-old kid respond to a song or a TV show or a movie that was made before I was even born, but that I grew up with, is always fascinating. So I'm curious, the two of you, what made you decide to delve into the movies that you're delving into, and how do the two of you work? Do you guys yell at each other? How's that work?
There's some yelling, but it's mostly one direction. He never yells at me. He wouldn't dare.
Oh, I was going to say the band?
One direction of the band. Yeah, there's yelling, but I mean, it's fun, creative, good yelling, if you will.
What is this? That kind of yelling.
Yeah.
What do you make me watch?
Yeah, some of the stuff we do watch, you're like, why are we watching this? What the hell did you get me into? But I think the reason we went with psychotronic, this path compared to other paths, is that there's a lot of fun stuff that I think she hasn't been exposed to. I have some exposure to it, and even if I have seen it, it's like maybe I saw it once on HBO or something like that, and it didn't really click. I was too young, but I still had memories of it, so it was fun to revisit some of these things with her, and see what our opinions were, because I wasn't into film back then. I was into, I don't know what I was into, but I was probably into Legos. It's probably Legos. Then I was like, yeah, let's get into this. So that's what we've been doing going into, and I think we found some very interesting things that you've actually been like, wow, this is really cool. And some you're like, well, we're not want to review this, because we actually did a few. I think we started to watch, and she's like, no,
sometimes I'm just not mentally prepared for some of these things.
What would be an example of that?
Repo Man. I was not ready for Repo Man.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
we're going to try it again.
Yeah,
right,
well, I didn't. So someone had described it to me ahead of time as a genre movie. And I didn't really know what that meant. I mean, I can just sort of assume just by the name of it, it's a genre movie, but I didn't have an understanding of I couldn't imagine that it was punk. It was just the epitome of punk in a movie. And that's not part of the culture that I was ever exposed to. So for me, I wasn't ready. I don't know.
It is a strange movie. It isn't something that you can just jump into. You have to work your way up to get into Repo Man. There's no giving someone a copy of Repo Man and saying good luck.
Well, it's also very different. I mean, in terms of, it's an LA punk movie.
Yeah.
It's not like Sid and Nancy, which deals with sort of the British punk scene, which is a very different kind of a thing. Plus, I mean, it's a weird hybrid of bizarre science fiction film, LA punk movie, and culty. See, this is a perfect example of what I mean, what I wanted to hear, because when Repo Man came out, we all went to see it. I mean, I was in high school when it came out, and the music, it has a great soundtrack. It had bands like the Germs and Suicidal Tendencies, but it was a weird movie even then. But we kind of thrived on that because there's no other movie like Repo Man. Yeah. So it's okay if you don't like it. I mean, Repo. Well, I mean, it's something people look. Here's the funny thing about a lot of these movies is the way movies are made and the feel of movies has changed. Yeah. So if you don't have anything analogous to Repo Man and you're watching it, you're like, how am I supposed to feel about this? What am I? You don't I don't. This is not a traditional story structure. I don't know. How am I supposed to get it? There's a British comedy that I love, but not a lot of Americans like it, and it's called With Nail and I. And with nail, like the word with and nail. With nail is one word, it's a guy's name. Americans just don't get it. And the Brits, it was made in the late 80s. It's a huge, it stars Richard E. Grant and Paul McGann. And I think it's hilarious. But a lot of people just hate it in America. Or not, they just don't get it. They're like, what is this? Why are you watching this?
Would you say it has British humor, or it's just unique in its own right?
I think both, because it first of all, Chicago, New York, New Orleans have drinking cultures, but Los Angeles is not we don't have a pub culture because you can't get hammered because everyone drives here. So
I think you say everything's so expensive.
Well, that too. But I mean, and With Nail and I is a movie about, we will have the finest ales, we will have them now. I mean, it's a very, it's basically about these two losers that go get lost in the countryside, and it's just they're all grungy and gross, and everything is mossy and wet, moist. It's a very moist movie. If you don't like the word moist,
I love my moist movies. Those are great.
But so what I found really interesting about your choice of The Hunger, and because The Hunger, I think a lot of people, it's obviously a cult movie, and I think if you ask people, if you were to say, okay, what are the two greatest goth movies ever made? Say Pre-Interview with a Vampire. Everybody would say The Hunger and The Crow. At least,
The Crow.
That Alex Proyas is The Crow. That was 94. It's funny because they're almost a year and a decade apart. Because vampire culture and all that. And then there's other vampire movies like Only Lovers Left Alive. That movie's pretty goth, with vampires in it. But
Sounds
also, it's great. I think you'd love it. If you
That's
guys
the Hiddleston one, right?
Yeah, Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, it's I love that film. But I think what's really interesting about The Hunger, and we're talking about Flashdance, but it really represents, there was an invasion of British directors, commercial directors that had a certain aesthetic that they were applying to music videos. And Tony Scott, who's Ridley's brother, probably was the most British commercial aesthetically driven director of them all. And The Hunger is his first film, and a lot of people it's based on Whitley Strieber's novel, but a lot of people just didn't dig it because a lot of the story is told in these really quick flashes. And now people get it because they've been so conditioned over the last 40 years from music videos. And somebody asked, I've talked to people about this movie, and it's like, well, she was like a vampire in ancient Egypt, and and people are like, wait, what? And I'm like, you see that in the film. You see that she's taking lovers and drinking blood. And I think at the time, a lot of people were really perplexed by the film. And I loved your review of it, but when you started watching it, what was like the first thing that hit you about, first of all, the movie? Did you know the band Bauhaus and Peter Murphy and the song Bela Lugosi?
I actually know of Bauhaus, but I didn't recognize the song because I have heard a lot of songs like that,
right?
Like from the last 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Because what Stairway to Heaven is to rock, I think Bela Lugosi's Dead it's like the great grandfatherly goth ballad of all. And Bauhaus. And so when I first saw The Hunger, I was really into music, and I didn't know that it was going to open in a goth club with Bauhaus playing, and that's Peter Murphy singing. And then, of course, the rest of his band went on to become Tones on Tail and then Love and Rockets. So to see them, for me, it was like, oh my God, what am I watching?
Yeah. So when Alan dropped you the GIF in our text, and he's like, guess which one we're reviewing? And it was one of the scenes from the very, very beginning, like when the music was playing and the band was performing. Did you get that GIF? Did you immediately recognize it?
Oh, yeah. Oh no! I mean, I've seen this movie 100 times.
Right.
I was like,
he sent it, and I was like, that's not even part of the movie. That's just the opening, the music video. Yeah. So I thought that was obscure, but
oh no! I think fans of The Hunger would know it, right? Because the opening is so, and also the way that the opening is edited, how it's basically you're getting the story of Sarah Roberts and her research, the goth club, how they seduce their victims, take them back to their posh digs. And dispatch with them, and watching the monkeys tear each other apart and everything. There's a lot going on there, and again, at the time, it was really pretty groundbreaking. And I thought it was, even when I saw it, I'm like, okay, this is a product of MTV. They couldn't because 10 years ago, you'd never make a movie like that, and there was a lot of, if you look at other movies that like Sylvester Stallone's Cobra. It is cut down to the bone. It's really tightly edited. And then Tony Scott went on to make Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop 2, and it didn't have the harsh cutting that The Hunger has, but it still was that very much that MTV aesthetic. And I loved in your review you pointed out all the textures and how beautifully lit it is, and why would you have white curtains when you're killing people with knives?
Obviously bleach. We said that was like, oh, bleach, you could bleach them afterwards. But I just found it I found it odd. But there's a lot of curtains in that movie. I mean, it's constant blowing
Yeah.
wind in that
Yeah.
room.
It's
Like
very
they do not
artsy.
close the windows in that apartment.
No,
I mean,
never.
The screams must not be. I'm sure all the neighbors like shut, quiet down.
I think the
yeah.
first thing that I said when we were watching it, because we don't normally stop and then replay parts, especially on the first watch.
Mm-hmm.
We got through the opening sequence, and it was the club, it was the after party, it was the monkeys, and I think the first things I said was, "Oh, it's gonna be like that." I said, "Oh, that's what this is." I think that's how it went. He goes, "Yep, just like that." And then the monkey had like, it was a little bit of it was a little visceral take with what was happening with the monkeys. And I said, "What just happened?" And Alan says, "I think you know exactly what just happened." I said, "I do, but I'm gonna watch it again." Just the way that it was told was so different. And then I had no idea what to expect for the rest of the movie. I was like, "Am I watching an art house film?
Yeah.
What kind of narrative should I be expecting after an introduction like that?"
You did go, "Oh, this is the most goth thing I've ever seen."
I did say
at
that.
the beginning. You're
It
like,
is.
"Wow,
It was the most goth thing."
I wanted to paint my nails black and just, I don't know."
Yeah.
Oh,
All
and-
sorts of
Ask me to
things
slit
goth.
your wrists after that.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, another thing that Americans also don't necessarily know is that Catherine Deneuve has goddess status in France. And she was in the early 60s. She was in movies. I mean, she was in Roman Polanski's Repulsion, which is one of the
Yep.
great movies about how women that are just are so put off sex are driven crazy and kill people. It's a great film. I love that movie. But in The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, which is one of the great romantic tragedies, that's actually an operetta where the entire movie's sung. She has goddess level status, and to put her together with David Bowie was, I thought, a brilliant. I mean, Bowie had done other movies. He did things like The Man Who Fell to Earth, which
Love that one.
it's a great film. And then after he made The Hunger, he made Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. He didn't do a lot of movies, but he did, like Labyrinth and things like that. But I thought in the Hunger, he was perfect because he was already so otherworldly. And then the makeup effects, which were done by Dick Smith, he was the best old age makeup artist in the world. And he worked on he did Dustin Hoffman's makeup in Little Big Man, and he did the makeup for The Exorcist. But that, when David Bowie ages rapidly, it's absolutely incredible.
It's
Yeah.
so good. It's
Yeah,
so
and
good.
I had never seen David Bowie in anything except for Labyrinth.
Yeah.
And when I saw Labyrinth, it was age appropriate for me, so I didn't notice who the actor was.
Right.
So we put on The Hunger, and I was like, "David Bowie is in this? He's an actor?" Like I've heard, but I didn't see, and I wasn't expecting the level of of expertise that he had to bring to the role.
He's really good.
He's
It was
really
surprising. And, so Rob, when this came out, when it came out, were you like, "Oh, David Bowie's in this type of movie," or was it like, "Oh, it's another David Bowie type film that he would do, typical like this type of art house thing," or what?
Yeah, I just thought it was cool because back it was interesting because Mick Jagger was in a movie called Performance, which is a really interesting film, and so it was really weird because in the early '80s, music and movies dovetailed quite a bit. And so, if you were really into movies, you were also a good bet pretty into music. So, it's not there anymore, but in Seattle, there was a Tower Records on Mercer Street, and I would go there all the time and rifle through the import section. I was buying 12-inch remixes, and I would buy CDs that I'd never heard of before, and so it was very much that Bowie was in a movie like The Hunger, and that it was a vampire novel, and that Catherine Deneuve was in it, and Susan Sarandon, who had been in Rocky Horror Picture Show, she was in it. So it was, and back in '83, you had all kinds of Valley Girl, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary. That was a kind of a punk romance, a bubblegum punk romance, but it had a great music score of a lot of LA bands, and so, and there were a lot of other movies, like a movie you might dig called Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains, that stars Diane Lane as the leader of an all-girl band.
Ooh,
And-
that sounds cool.
You guys would love that. It's really good. And then there was a French movie called Invitation au Voyage that I'd love to see again, but I can't get it anywhere, which is about a guy, I remembered as being like his sister, who was a punk rocker, died, and he put her body in a cello case and drove around France and was putting up posters for his sister's band to keep her memory alive, and didn't tell anybody she had died. I think it was like 85 or something, but there was, I know there was all kinds of these kinds of, you know, there were, and the thing is, they were very much like alternative rock, college rock. It was like that, and so there was a lot of movies. Like these movies would never get made today. Like you could never get a movie like Repo Man made. And The Hunger, you know, they made a TV series of The Hunger, not really based on the movie, but it was more of an anthology show. And I think because vampires have always been great, but I love this updating. And they picked up on that, like you had The Lost Boys in 87 and Near Dark in, I think, 86 and 87. So there were a lot of vampire movies. And then you had Fright Night, which is a different kind of movie, but fun, in 85. And Grace Jones starred in Vamp. So there were all kinds of music. I mean, I think, and then of course, the thing that people don't remember is Anne Rice wrote Interview with a Vampire, and that came out in 1976. But the sequel, The Vampire Lestat, came out, I might be wrong about this, but I think the book came out in 82. And in that book, Lestat became a rock star. So, and that book was a huge book, and I mean, everyone wanted to be the vampire Lestat. Like, why wouldn't you want to be a rock star vampire? I mean, and I think there's something to be said that, I mean, you know what, if I could hang out with Catherine Deneuve and take showers with her for 350 years, it would be worth it, to becoming a desiccated old husk sitting in my coffin, still alive in the
For
in the
eternity?
attic.
Yeah.
I don't know, those 300 years with Catherine Deneuve, man, that would be...
It'd get you through a good millennia. Yeah.
But it was, and a lot of people didn't get that either. When people watched the movie, they're like, "What's happening?" And you brought it up, like the studio mandated an ending get tacked on, and
Yeah, that was odd. That was interesting. So they thought this was going to be a big franchise, possibly.
yeah.
We could open this up for something more. I mean, I don't know what you would do with it besides just have the same story happen again, but with different characters. I don't.
Well, Whitley Strieber did write sequels, and Marion
did he?
Blaylock,
Wow.
he did. She didn't die, and and so there were. Yeah, I don't know what they thought they were going to do with this, and I'm sure that they were perplexed. The studio was probably, it was an MGM movie, so I'm sure they were like, "What is this?" I mean, I can only imagine that the studio executives at the time were like, "What the fuck have we made?" You know, I mean, what is
Nothing
this?
to recover from, desiccating her and putting her into a box.
Yeah, I don't.
She's no longer the tender, voluptuous Miriam Blaylock that she was. You
It'd
have to
probably
go
a
on
campy
Susan
sequel.
Sarandon.
It'd probably be a campy 80s sequel. They'd probably, just like every 80s, it'd always get more effects and fun,
So
and
confusing.
the logo super red with a big 2, and yeah, all that stuff that we. The hunger. We had the hungering. Is that what we're doing?
The
Yeah,
The
we need to take
hungering.
titles.
Well, those graphics you moneyed up for that video was pretty great.
Yeah, and I didn't make those. I typed. I said, hey, I need these 3. I gave him the 3 titles,
These
and our
would be
editor
great
just throws them
titles.
together really fast for us.
And of
so.
course, you picked the title of.
There's
Hunger Games.
there's the
Oh, yeah.
the Blu-ray that Warner Archive put out. Sorry, I didn't mean to put it over your face
no,
like
no.
that. I'm sorry I did that, but
Good.
yeah, so he put you back. So there you go. I didn't mean to do that, but yeah, I was going to say that the movie is available on it's a beautiful transfer. The Blu-ray is a beautiful transfer. But I mean, I would ask, like, looking back at from today's perspective, how do you think this works for today's audiences? Do you think it's too dated? Can people get into this? And I mean, from your perspective, when you were watching it, like you said, you had to rewind scenes to kind of, because the editing, it is a little bit incomprehensible, but in a way, it's such an art film. It looks like the whole movie looks like a perfume ad. It really does.
Really mad. That's a great point.
Well, I thought the first half of it was fantastic. I mean, the whole thing with David Bowie and his arc, I mean, I think the most appealing part about this is that it wasn't vampires in the traditional sense, right? There's no fangs, there's no sucking of the blood, there's no sunlight and sparkles. And it always, I mean, I have always been an Anne Rice fan, and I've always wondered, what about the original vampire? And, some franchises do try to tackle that question, but to bring it all the way back to ancient Egypt and, to know, at least from general pop culture, that, eternal life and what happens after death has always been a big part of Egyptian lore. To play on that is something that no one does. No one, I don't think anyone has ever done since then. I've never seen anything about it. And so I think that would resonate really well, especially because everyone still loves vampires.
Oh yeah, I mean,
think
they've never gone away.
Yeah.
And
Now,
it looks slick too. It just
Yeah.
looks slick.
Yeah.
I mean that sort of just I mean I'm in awe of the production of this. I mean when I looked at it, I was like, just want to make me go outside and shoot anything and make it blue, and have shadows on everyone's face, because it is gorgeous. It reminded me of Heat, like the cinematography where it has that almost that same vibe to it, Michael Mann type stuff. I love that look. There's that telephoto type compression on everything, close-ups that just look artfully composed, and I was just in love with the visuals. I won't lie. The first time we watched it, I was kind of zoning out, just like, oh god, that's gorgeous. And there's like this girl dancing in the street, like on a skateboard. I don't know, skateboard or
in silhouette with the roller skates.
I'm like, God, this is the stuff I ask for every day in anything I work on, and I just in awe that this has been made at that time, and this can be in this type of movie. And I wonder if audiences would, see that, and like, because right now everything's streaming, Netflix, new movies, and everything always looks overly lit. And it feels like it's made lit so they can later do some post effects to it. It's like, shoot it bright, we'll do something later. It's just something about it that it's just so unique, and you can feel the grain and everything. Again, I'm getting very technical because I tend to do that.
But I
visuals of it.
No, but I think you're absolutely right. And obviously, a lot of the time, a friend of mine who worked on Ridley Scott's movies said he was struck by the fact that there's usually like maybe even just one large HMI or something. Like the whole scene is lit from just one light, one direction, and he's not afraid to let people go in and out of the shadows. And and nowadays everyone's like, well, you have to like get the key lights and get the fills and get the edge lights in there and make everything. And one of the things I love about that sort of British invasion, and if you look at movies like Angel Heart, Angel Heart and Jacob's Ladder for that matter, the look of those films are very similar. Jacob's Ladder and like when you get into New York City, and same with Angel Heart and Blade Runner, they all have that same kind of aesthetic, and I equate that with those British directors. And because when the American music video directors rose in the 90s, like people like David Fincher and Michael Bay and Dominic Sena and those guys, they all were at propaganda. They were all doing these high-end commercials. They were the most highly paid music video guys. And their aesthetic was similar, but they had a lot more color. They wouldn't be so monochromatic as something like The Hunger was. And I understood that, but I really like when you got onto the streets of New York, the Brits knew how to shoot metal and concrete better, I thought, because they weren't so interested in overlighting everything.
Yeah, this is a very film noir look. I mean, I think that's part of the inspiration that I was seeing. You got the hats, you got the smoking. There's a lot of film noir that was going on.
Yeah, and you mentioned how much smoke, because when you're a vampire, you can smoke all you want.
That's right.
You're not. Who cares?
Oh gosh.
There's scenes of him just sitting there smoking, like just contemplating everything, and I love it. That's the parts that I would be like, would modern audiences be able to sit and watch David Bowie smoke for 30 seconds in the shadows?
Well,
that's a good. I mean, I would.
It caused me so much stress to know that he was so rapidly aging. He was still being very patient. He had that like immortal sense of patience.
That's true. Immortal patience. I like that.
Patience. Yeah, he's just sitting in the waiting room, knowing that his clock is ticking so very, very quickly.
He was so polite.
And he's so polite.
Such a polite vampire man.
I know. The way he was just like, you had your chance to Susan Sarandon, and walks away.
He was like grabbing the magazine.
Look at that. God.
Well, great. And then, of course, one of the things that I actually got in trouble in a college lecture at the Evergreen State College, I made a video for, I had a pretty famous lesbian film teacher in college named Barbara Hammer. She's no longer with us. And I really respected her. I really liked her. She did not like me. When I was in college, I was helping teach an aerobics class at Evergreen. We were like, teaching aerobics at Evergreen was like being a punk rocker. And I had made a tape of images from science fiction, fantasy, and horror films from 1931 to the present, which was 85. And The Hunger was one of the things I ended with. And of course, the love scene, the celebrated love scene. You know, Lakme is playing, and it's an unbelievably beautiful, maybe the most beautiful lesbian love scene ever filmed in any movie with two women. And what was great about it is both of those women, I mean, Catherine Deneuve was in her early 40s, and both of these women are just stunningly beautiful. And again, shot like a perfume ad. And you can't, as a dude, you can't not, love that scene. And when I played my tape and this scene came, this teacher, she jumped up, and what I had to do was show my tape, which was an hour long, and then I had to lecture for an hour. That was what I had to do She was so incensed. She was fucking furious.
Oh,
I could see. She goes, "How dare you?" and she was like, "How dare?" I mean, it was.
This doesn't belong to you.
Yeah. And what was really interesting is, of course, I put it in there because it's very titillating, it's very sexy, and it's beautifully photographed, and it's a really great. It's a love scene. That's the climax is the penetration of the fangs and the mixing of the blood and all of that. But she was like, how, you as a straight white, I mean, if the word cis existed, she would have come down hard on that. You cis white male. How dare you? And she asked me, she said, why did you put this scene in this movie, in your videotape, in your tape? And I said, well, traditionally, horror especially has been more accepting of more non-traditional sexuality. And the thing about vampire mythology, it's not about the sex, it's about the seduction, and it's about the penetration of and mixing the blood. And I said, but the point of the hunger is that unlike Dracula or somebody like that who wants a bevy of young maidens to service him, the thing about Marion Blaylock is the reason she takes a partner, and she's taken men and women throughout history, is that she's an immortal and she's lonely. And she can't bear loneliness, and she has to have, that's why she replaced John so quickly. And that was her MO. And can you imagine being an immortal and watching everybody you ever loved grow old and die in such a short period of time relatively to you? And I gave this long kind of impassioned speech about why I chose this thing, and the class actually clapped. The lecture hall, they clapped. But Barbara Hammerman, she was pissed, and she never forgave me. And when I gave her my senior, I left to USC earlier than I thought because she wouldn't approve my senior project. She got pissed.
Oh. What was your project?
Well, I was going to make it so at Evergreen you could do whatever you wanted, basically. And I had written a short horror film called Sentimental Value. And I was going to make it because Evergreen had all this great equipment. We had 16 millimeter cameras, and I really wanted to. I'd made a short called Baby's Blood, and I wanted to do a follow up on that. So I'd written this script, and it was kind of inspired by another movie, but it was about a guy who pretended to know people who had died and go to their funerals and meet their next of kin to sort of get free shit so he could sell it.
Oh.
And the thing is, what he didn't realize is that all of this stuff that he was taking, it was imbued with part of a little bit of the soul from the people who had owned it. So as he's doing this, eventually at the end of the movie, all the people that he had stolen from come back from the dead and tear him apart.
Oh, nice.
And so I had to get her to approve this script, and it was a 30-page script. And I this is what she did. I handed her the script, and she looked at it, and she flipped through the pages, and she looked back up at me, and she said, "I'm not going to approve this. It's too commercial."
Oh,
and I said, "But you haven't even read it." She goes, "It doesn't matter. I know whatever you've written is way too commercial." Because she made these experimental films about like naked women going up to the top of a mountain and menstruating, and then the blood would come down the mountains. Yeah, she was an art, but she made a really interesting, I want to say, called Nitrate Kisses, a documentary about closeted gays in Hollywood, which was actually a very good film. And I really respected her, which bummed me out that she.
Yeah.
I mean, I was profiled. She profiled me. She wasn't wrong, but I'm like, she didn't understand that I was totally gay adjacent. Anybody, come on, man, give me a break. But yeah, the hunger torpedoed my chances to finish my senior project.
Oh man.
But
it seems like the equivalent of withering into a box and then being put away after spending 300 years with Catherine Deneuve. There you go.
I know. I mean, you spend the rest of eternity going, God damn, the getting was good for a while there. It's kind of like having a career in Hollywood. You work in Hollywood as long as you can, then you get put in a wooden box and you just sit there wondering what happened to your career.
This got dark.
And die.
Very goth.
Wow. Here we go.
Well, so now let me ask the two of you, like when you're deciding what movies you're going to pick to review, what are the criteria? And like we've done psychotronic stuff, but Alan, you and I were talking about doing action films, and I was thinking, erotic thrillers, teen comedies, branch out. We just started that way, but I think you should tackle anything and everything. But do you guys have to agree, or how do you pick the movies you do?
Oh, my process is to trust him.
She trusts me.
My one and only step.
Yeah, that's really how it goes.
And sometimes the second step of regret.
Yeah. And I tend to just be like, what was our last movie? Like, what did we do before Hunger? I don't remember. What
it was The Brood.
The Brood. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was like, we should do something a little more modern.
That was an easy one because I love Cronenberg.
Yeah, and she loves Cronenberg, so I wasn't too worried about that one actually.
He knows my taste really well.
Yeah,
so it's never a hard conversation.
That's one of my favorite things is find the taste of someone's what they love in film. Not just being one of those guys who's like, oh, I saw that thing, I really liked it, you should watch it.
It's
more
would be
like
really fun as a fun like experiment / activity is if you wanted to collect super chats of people's favorite movies and have Alan recommend you something.
Oh no, that's really
what?
I know you very well. I don't want to go that deep.
I think you could.
I'm all right. I'm busy enough. I'm good. it's not a superpower.
So easy,
but no, it's really just like I've always like my dream was like to be an old man and have a theater and show films of films I think people might be interested in. The people I know the town, like I know everyone, like I know Bob who works over at the grocery store. I know this person, and I'm like, oh, I know what they like. I could figure out the type of programming to show them. That's one of my dreams as an old man. Once had it.
Yes,
not anymore.
When you're old.
When I'm old. And again, I just love finding films that I think someone might like, and when she doesn't like it, I'm like, okay, we're never doing anything like that ever again. This isn't gonna.
Sometimes I'm just not ready. I want to do Repo Man again.
Repo Man, I think you saw some things in it that you were like, okay, this is interesting. Then you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And it's a very quotable film. I love the quotes, like all the lines they say. You just want a T-shirt of everything.
You find one in every car.
That's right.
You'll see.
It's funny because I never saw Repo Man until I saw. I don't remember Twister back in the '90s. There's the director Todd. Is it Todd Phillips? Todd something. Tim and Philip Seymour Hoffman. They're part of his team of tornado chasers. It's one of my favorite action films actually in the '90s. And they say this line, "Repo Man, gets in the tense situations" or something like that. And I'm like, I never knew what it was from. I was like, well, that's from Twister, right? And then when my friend's like, dude, that's from Repo Man.
Yeah.
You gotta watch Repo Man. And I watched Repo Man. I'm like, oh.
They're making a sequel to Twister right now.
Yeah,
Twisters.
I don't need it.
Twisters?
I don't need it. Yeah, well, of course. It's gonna be the son of Bill Paxton and the daughter of. Yeah, I don't.
Well, the funny thing about Repo Man 2 is that's the Repo code. I mean, it's got such a great Harry Dean Stanton. Laurie Walters is he gives the plate of shrimp speech. Someone says shrimp, a plate of shrimp. It's and Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh yeah, Flea, man, Flea's great. And like Back in the Future was my first Flea experience, and it stuck with me because he's so good.
Who was he in Back to the Future?
Oh, he was just one of the. God, what was he?
Part of the gang, the kid, the bad kids.
He's on the screen in Back to the Future 2, I think, too.
Yeah.
When he's getting fired or something like that, maybe. Is that what it is? I love it. Oh man, I love when that happens. Again, another musician in a movie.
Oh yeah, and then Anthony Kiedis is in Point Break.
Oh, that's right. He
plays War Child.
He does. I remember that. And we just watched that recently. I just showed her Point Break recently, and she's like, "Did you like that one?" I don't remember if you liked that. You did?
I liked it.
Did you? Do you remember?
I don't.
You don't remember it?
Remind me which movie this is.
This is Keanu Reeves, and it's surfing.
Oh yeah, I did like that.
And Patrick Swayze is Bodie.
Yeah, that's right.
Bodie. And
I did like Patrick Swayze.
The president masks.
Yeah.
That was the original. I mean, that's what that's from, right? Because I've seen people redo the President Mask thing.
I'm curious. I don't know.
The dead presidents are surfers.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
I feel like as I get older, I'm looking more and more like Gary Busey in the which isn't a good thing. But yeah, it's
I don't know if we answered your question there, but it just it's like what do we? I think we feel like this week. You know, what type of movie? Because a certain movie gives you a feel and an energy that, you know, maybe we're like, oh, we don't want to see anything. I don't know. We're just feeling down. We want some more fun and lighthearted, or want some gore. We want to be really like scared, or, you know, just you feel it out. You know. And
Whenever he asks me what I feel like watching, do I always say the same thing?
You usually want horror.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a very much a horror girl.
Always horror.
Yeah. I don't know if you were a horror girl when I met you, but you definitely became.
Yeah, I hadn't seen much, but it was the things that I liked were always horror. Or, what's the other stuff like Fatal Attraction type stuff?
Oh yeah,
erotic thrillers.
Erotic thrillers,
and those we still haven't
those.
gone down all that. We did all the Richard
Richard Gere.
Gere. I say
Yes.
Gere.
He's
films.
he's like a whole category that I love.
Yeah, he is a category.
Sometimes
Have you guys watched Internal Affairs?
No.
Did we?
Okay, Internal. Andy Garcia. Richard Gere plays an evil
I haven't
cop.
seen that one.
Ooh.
He's okay. Internal Affairs. You have to watch it. It was directed by Mike Figgis. It is. Richard Gere is so fucking good as the bad guy in Internal Affairs. He plays a totally corrupt cop, and Andy Garcia is the good cop that goes after him. And the shit he's got, I won't say it here because I don't want to ruin it for you. When he taunts Andy Garcia, it's so good. When the stuff that comes out of his mouth in that movie, you're gonna go, oh my god. Richard Gere is so good in Internal Affairs. Have you seen Primal Fear?
Yes.
No, okay, so I call that movie Primal Gear, but Primal Fear is great. But Richard Gere is so good in Internal Affairs. It's because I too love Richard Gere.
Yeah,
I love American Gigolo and Days of Heaven and but you guys, have you seen American Gigolo?
I don't think I've seen that one. No, I have not seen
okay. This is what you got to do. You got to promise me.
Okay,
you got to have the Richard Gere. First of all, American Gigolo is where he plays a male escort, and he gets wrapped up in murder, and that's where the song "Call Me," the Blondie song "Call Me" was popularized. And American Gigolo is a very famous. I think it's 1980. It came out in 1980. It is so. It's a movie that blows open the 80s. The fashion that you guys will fucking love. American Gigolo. So American Gigolo is 1980, and I want to say Internal Affairs is 1990. Okay. It is the peak Richard Gere experience. You cannot get more Richard Gere than watching American Gigolo and watching Internal Affairs. It is, and American Gigolo might be American Gigolo and Officer. Have you seen Officer and Gentleman?
I've seen that one. I have seen that
because
long time ago.
Okay, yeah. Lana. It's got to be a Gere triple feature then. You gotta watch. You gotta watch American Gigolo, Officer and Gentleman, and then because he's basically a good character in those two movies, and then Internal Affairs because that's some peak.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I feel shame for claiming to be a fan and not having seen these 3 incredible movies.
He has a lot of movies.
That's true.
Yeah,
but I've seen Unfaithful like 15 times. Which is just...
Well, yeah, but but see, the thing is, here's the funny thing about being I would call myself as a YouTube pundit or whatever. I'm fucking old. And the post coming of age and seeing being able to see to me the demarcation point was seeing Star Wars for the very first time in a theater when it came out in 1977. And everybody, like, if there's the boomer generation, there's Gen X, there's millennials, there's Gen Z, whatever. I would say that the golden age movie geeks that exist today all saw Star Wars in the theater in 1977 because that actually changed Hollywood. So the movies that came out post Star Wars, and so many of them were classics because they were very different, and it ushered in the summer blockbuster era, and different kinds of movies were made after that. So that's another thing about people who are like, to me, one of the more unfortunate things is movies now. What are some touchstones? What was the last movie that you saw that blew your mind, that you watch it and like, I've never seen anything like that before?
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
That's okay. That's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
That's a good one.
It feel really unique.
It did. Yeah.
Oh man,
that's a good one. I mean, I think because growing up, we saw the effects technology like in 93 when Jurassic Park came out. That was a jaw-dropping moment in cinema history because no one had ever seen photorealistic dinosaurs ever. It was either model dinosaurs or stop-motion dinosaurs. And that was when, when the brachiosaur rears up and takes the leaves off the trees and, Alan Grant takes his glasses off. That was a huge moment in cinema history where you're like, oh my God, that's insane. And then Star Wars, the Matrix in 99 was a big deal. Seeing those effects. But nowadays we don't, because movies, the studios are now making these giant tent poles.
Yeah.
So the variety and the diversity of the kinds of movies that are being made, like studios were making erotic thrillers. And they were making like Fatal Attraction, huge movie for Basic Instinct, huge, which I love, a huge movie. And the studios don't even touch erotic thrillers anymore.
Well, Lifetime does, though, right? The Lifetime channel.
Oh,
isn't that pretty much the new erotic channel? Like, isn't that 24-hour erotic thrillers?
Yeah, but when you have, when you have 24-hour full-on X-rated porn at your fingertips, where's the eroticism?
It's true.
And I feel that's kind of what killed the erotic thriller. I mean, if you're 12 years old, a 12-year-old boy, and you want to see boobs, you just can. When I was 12, I couldn't when I wanted to. And so, I mean, nowadays you can just whenever you want. And I think that part of the, we now have pornography, but we don't have eroticism. Mm-hmm. It's been sort of removed, and you see a lot of that with like burlesque culture, like Dita Von Teese became big, and I kind of liked all of that, and seeing that whole thing come back, and undergarments and garters and all that stuff, and bring that back, and because being explicit is easy, being erotic is hard, and being erotic should get you hard, but not get you off. If that's a rule, that's kind of what, and no one knows how to do that anymore. Everybody goes from 0 to 60, and then you're done. Oh, the race is already over? Oh.
Yeah. That's how I feel about like effects and puppets and everything. You say like, you ask what movie was the last one to blow my mind. It's all of these old ones because, I grew up in a land of CGI and like effects. And even though they weren't always great, I never really saw any practical effects. I never saw people's heads popping open and puppets' arms coming out and like to grab like, Freddy's like faces coming out behind the kid to grab. That's all new to me. That blows my mind. I can't believe the talent and the effort that goes. And it'd be so easy today to just make it in the computer program, but to do it with practical effects is
that works
to me.
Yeah. So that works for you. That's very interesting. Yeah. So the effects technology. Have you seen American Werewolf in London?
Yes.
Yeah. She loves that. Yeah. I mean, that transformation scene. Yeah.
And that transformation scene takes place in high key lighting. The room is very well lit.
You see it all.
It's amazing. And at the same time, there was another film, a lesser known movie called The Howling, that also has a pretty great.
Show that one too. That was a great. The mouth.
Give me a piece of my mind.
Yeah, it's so good. Well, it's really interesting because just VFX in general, I feel it's the constraints. I think without having constraints, there's more creativity, in my opinion, in having constraints. And when you get VFX, you have no constraints. The director can go, or whoever's visualizing this. We could do that. We could do this. Oh, yeah, you want that? You want this? It's just going to cost money, obviously, but we can do it. And I think when you have the constraints from, at least from my point from doing art or anything like that, back when I used to be a concept artist, right? For video games. So I would draw, you have to draw this tree, Alan, but here are your constraints. You can only do it 4x4 and this screen and this. I'm like, oh crap, I have to draw a tree in that size? Are you killing me? What am I gonna do? So I'd sit there and I'd just, okay, what are I doing? And just a little bit, I placed that leaf a little different. And I'm like, oh my God, I got it. Thank God. And there was no like, think of any crazy idea you want, Alan. It was more just like try and make it work in that 4x4 square. So those things, there's some magic in that I feel it's being lost in just like creative vision in general. And we saw The Flash again. We don't want to get too much of that, but we saw that, and I felt there's a lot of great stylized, really cool creative ideas. But I feel that again, some constraints should have been brought in to just hone in a little bit more so it could tighten it up. together a little bit, because this is just how I feel in most big visual effects films I see. We just go too far out because now we can, And yeah,
I'm with you.
It's explicit.
Yeah,
It's in a way it's pornographic, because now you can do anything, and a visual effects shot is only as good as the design of the shot itself.
Yeah,
and a lot of people, when CGI first came in and they started doing a lot of space battles with CG, the ships, there was no physics. Not that there's physics in space battles that we see anyway, but you didn't like even in Star Trek. You want to believe that the starships are big, lumbering capital ships. And like Star Trek 2 did a really great job of showing starship combat. But then when you make the big starships that are supposed to be these big, lumbering ships, when they move without any kind of mass to them or inertia, then you don't believe in them.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But now one of the things about The Hunger, again, I think the makeup on John Blaylock is some of the greatest
It's great.
practical makeup ever, and it really, total verisimilitude. You completely believe what's going on. It's heartbreaking because how many 50 years, 75 years of his life slip away while he's waiting in that hotel room,
Yes.
or not, in
So
the waiting room of
In the waiting
the
room of the
hospital. And
Yeah.
I love when he says his line, "You lied."
Yeah, that was
Mr.
great.
Blaylock, come back. And, oh my God, you can't leave. And she's like, oh my, and has seen something she's never seen before.
Mhm. And he says, "How about you wait in the waiting room?"
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, that was good. Nice burn. Love it.
A little petty, but patient.
Yes.
Definitely
Oh, so good.
patient. And
Yes.
I think so looking back, I mean, in terms of this movie, see, to me, if you're a horror fan and you're a fan of 80s movies, The Hunger does loom large. But not a lot of people know it necessarily anymore. And I feel that's true of a lot of I would say, movies like Altered States, which was a big movie in 1980 when it came out. Not many people know that film anymore. And to me, I find it strange that some of these movies are just forgotten. And I think that The Hunger, for all of its flash, it is kind of deep in a way. I mean, some people say that it isn't. It is. And I wanted to read this review. I found this bad review of The Hunger. And if you would indulge me, I would like to read it.
Absolutely.
So here's this. I've never gone to this site before. Filmotomy, dissecting film from the grit to the stars. And this was written by Cole Clark on October 5th, 2020. And the headline is Blood-Splattered Mess, the enticing failure of 1983's The Hunger. Any film that opens with an extended nightclub scene set to Bela Lugosi's Dead is ripe for examination. 1983's The Hunger, directed by Tony Scott, is often criticized for an overemphasis on flash at the expense of narrative. The rumors are true. There are a lot of problems with this story. The ending was changed by the studio, hoping for sequels, and Scott's direction is far too involved in the look rather than the lives of the lead characters. But decades later, we're still discussing it. Influence from goth culture in the costumes and set design defines The Hunger, along with its two inimitable leads, David Bowie and Catherine Deneuve. Practically any film Bowie appeared in was destined for cult status, but this one gives him a truly unique arc. He and Deneuve play centuries-old vampires, John and Miriam Blaylock, and the film begins with John noticing irregularities in his appearance. Clumps of hair come out his hands and wrinkles encircle his eyes. He's meant to look 30, but at 15 minutes in the film, John could be 50. Miriam is his stone-faced partner, with her eyes set on Sarah Roberts, an attractive doctor studying the possibility of elongated human life. There are enough pieces in play for The Hunger to be a fine erotic thriller. The cast is strong, the setup enticing, but the filmmakers seem disinterested in following through with any of their setups. For example, an extended sequence at the beginning of the film shows John and Miriam stalking a nightclub. John in a wig and Miriam in sunglasses. Bauhaus's gothic tribute to Bela Lugosi plays diegetically, not diuretically. Diuretically is very different. Diegetically means the music is actually in the scene of the movie. So it's not score, it's actually in the scene. Cutting to singer Peter Murphy repeatedly as the song escalates and tension mounts. John and Miriam select their victims, and quick edits take us to their home, where they seduce and eventually feast on their prey. Stylish, goth, sexy. By the way, That is Anne Magnuson with David Bowie. Let me put that on screen. She, for you Star Trek fans, was the admiral in Star Trek Picard season 3 that said Picard season 1, who said sheer fucking hubris that launched a million memes. That is her.
Wow.
That is
I
her.
did not know that.
Yes,
Crazy.
that is her. She was also killed in Clear and Present Danger, and she was Mel Gibson's ex-wife in Tequila Sunrise, a movie that I totally love. With all the excessive cross-cutting, the sequence is an effective tone setter, suggesting a story of devotion and necessity using a vampire's need to kill as a foil for romance. The following scenes, however, promise a very different film. And then this goes on and on and on, and I won't read the whole thing. But the erotic label to the film The Hunger is largely absent before the centerpiece sex scene, but it's yet another mesh of incompatible ideas. Sarah is overwhelmed with desire for Miriam, and the two do a lot of kissing and cupping, sharing nearly every frame with a billowing curtain or starkly lit wall. Scott's direction leans into editing and cinematography, chopping the scene into chronological bits, quite the unsatisfying method of depicting sex. If the goal was to fragment both women's perspectives, the effect is undercut by careful establishing shots showing the two getting into bed, inching closer, touching, etc. There are too many cuts that obscure and not enough that enhance or communicate a feeling to the viewer. Passion is lost in the art. In the chaos, Miriam bites Sarah, beginning the Doctor's transformation into something more than human. Miriam needs to replace John, and Sarah is her choice. Yet in a final twist, Sarah kills herself, refusing eternal life with Miriam. Ancient corpses, including a vomit-inducing John, appear from thin air to accost Miriam as she herself decomposes in a matter of seconds. If there's anything resembling payoff in The Hunger, it's this moment. Miriam gets punished for being a vampire, I guess. Morality is difficult to pin down in this film, but there's no use focusing on it. Anyway, that's not really the end. Basically, every idea in The Hunger is thrown out within the first 20 minutes, so why do people keep giving it a chance? Well, try imagining the Rocky Horror Picture Show without any music. It'd be far less entertaining, disorienting, in fact, but it's not often you see a film swing for the fences in 10 different directions. Failure is enticing, but failure with the promise of greatness, well, that's watchable. So that's not the whole review, but it's some of the review. I like some of the things he said there, but I think sometimes, what I really liked about, call it MTV filmmaking, is that the imagery was the point. The juxtaposition of like when there's a lot of quick cuts when Sarah's imagining Miriam going swimming. And there's a great scene when you see her diving into the pool and you see her whole backside. That was erotic and that was beautiful. And her form is something that even after meeting her, she couldn't get Miriam Blaylock out of her mind because she's a vampire and vampires, get into your head. Yep. And I don't think like in this guy, I don't think he really kind of got that. And there's a lot of that. Like Tony Scott was trying to make a movie that had more to do with memory, and rather than explain the plot, like a lot of these MTV movies, they relied on that imagery. Like music videos did so much of that. You just start juxtaposing imagery, and suddenly meaning was created where meaning wasn't in the first place. But you put two images next to each other, and suddenly you've created something that maybe wasn't in the script. I don't know. Do you guys think that's true? Am I off base on that?
No, you sound right. It sounds like you nailed it.
I thought it was very overcritical of the way that it was edited, especially the love scene. I mean, did they really complain about the edits being chronological and that was a problem?
Yeah,
I'm confused by that.
At all.
But yeah, no, I do like that you emphasize the I guess the telepathy aspect of that, because that's something that we talked about like days after we did the review, and I couldn't get it out of my head. Is the idea that you asked me a question. You said you thought that the first time they met, because I had remarked on enjoying this moment so much, but there's a moment where Susan Sarandon's character, Dr. Sarah Roberts, goes up to the Blaylock house and she rings the doorbell looking for John, and Miriam opens and she goes, "Oh," because she recognizes her from the bookstore. And the way that Susan Sarandon said, "Oh, just I felt it," like she was hypnotized already in that moment. And when we were recalling this, Alan had asked me, he said, "When was the first time that they met? That was the moment." I said, "No, no, 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 no. It was when they were at the bookstore and she was doing the signing."
That's right.
They hadn't really spoken. That was the weird part. Is Sarah or Dr. Dr. Roberts was signing. Miriam just walked by, and there was a long hold on Dr. Roberts where she's looking, and she looks at a person, and for no reason at all, she like hears something in her mind. She looks over and she goes, "Did you say something?" or something like that.
Oh yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, and then Miriam says, "I didn't, but I would like to speak with you." And she's okay, and then she just leaves.
I mean,
and
clearly,
I got tingles.
yeah,
thinking about it.
No,
Yeah.
that's a great moment. And again, it's subtle. I mean, I've always thought it's really weird because I've often wished that we could hear, like when you try to get to know somebody, like whether it's a girlfriend, a lover, or whatever it is, that if you could hear their thoughts, because it would make for a much more, I think, interesting. We'd all have more interesting lives. Maybe AI will one day let us read each other's thoughts, but not in a bad way. Not like knowing the bad things, but being able to connect, because it's really weird when you like watch erotic scenes, or we watch them from a distance, but when you're participating, you're close up and it's very different. It's all imagery and it's all, I mean, you have to, if you want to watch, you can, but you got to pull back. But when you're involved in it, it's very much not, it's not like you're watching a narrative. It's all feeling, and I thought that the movie kind of did that. Like, when you see, like, I find myself, I've seen both men and women that I see, they're striking people. Like you're in a club or you're in a restaurant and you see even a man who's incredibly well dressed, who has a really well tailored suit, and he just looks somebody who has, you want to look at those kinds of people. And vampires, I guess, would be the most, they would have that charm. They would have that fairy glamour about them. When even, I mean, look at the way Marion Blaylock is dressed in that bookstore scene. I mean, she's clearly on another level. And she's got the fashion sensibility of 2,000 years behind her.
Yeah.
She knows more about the world's fashion than any other creature on planet Earth. So when she walks out of the house, she's going to walk out of the house and be the best dressed, the most stylish, the most striking creature wherever she goes. Mm-hmm. And I thought that they didn't have to tell you that, but I did, like what you're saying, it's implicit in that bookstore scene. Mm-hmm. Because when you first see her, which she's got the veil over her face, it's awesome.
Yeah. And I feel like they do the great job of that throughout. Like, like you said, you're feeling that experience. And I feel like they really conveyed that well. Like when Sarah Roberts can't stop thinking about Miriam Blaylock. Yeah. The way that they present that, you feel her anxiety, you feel her sense of being lost. And so she shows up at the door and she does just the one side where she props up her hair, I don't know why I'm here. You feel that. And Miriam knows.
Yeah.
Miriam knows exactly why she's there. I know why you're here. I brought you here. I planted myself in you. I mean, and that's, I do feel like, even though it's funny to say, I feel that there's a maturity to that movie that we don't, I feel that a lot of films have been sort of dumbed down for the audience. I mean, everything is so formulaic now that I don't think we don't have a lot of filmmakers left that know how to convey this kind of stuff simply through imagery. And I think that one of the things that you see in a lot of Hollywood movies, especially our big blockbusters, there's so many people involved in the production that there's not a lot of auteurist. I mean, we've got Martin Scorsese, sure. You've got Paul Thomas Anderson. You've got David Fincher. I can't wait to see his new movie, The Killer. But there's not a lot of filmmakers that are known for that kind of thing. And I think that that's one of the things that we're missing from cinema. Mm-hmm. And I think when you go back and you look at this movie now from our perspective, maybe it seems smarter than it is, or maybe I'm just looking back at it through rose-colored glasses. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think we were pretty impressed. I mean, you were like, this movie's awesome. I mean, we had some criticism during, I think, the whole stabbing climactic scene.
Everything towards the end.
And again, that's where the visuals maybe get a little mixed up with the narrative, maybe too much. Where we were just trying to understand what's happening.
And they didn't set that up at all.
Yeah, and it just
No.
kind of happens. You're like, oh, what is? We're like, was it no? And
I
then
was
we
hoping
got a
they
little
wouldn't
frustrated. Like, what
overplay
is
the
this?
Ankh thing, and then they did. And
Yeah,
in the
and
most nonsensical way.
yeah, then it just kept going further when the zombies.
And I
come
laughed
to
really
life
hard
and-
actually, because I think one of the last reviews we did, I said, oh, I just hate how on the nose the ending is. I prefer a much more ambiguous ending. Like The Thing, that's how you do a fucking ending.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
we watched The Hunger, and I was like, what the fuck was that?
That's true. We owned it.
That was the most ambiguous ending I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, it really is, and it's that's another. I think when the movie came out, I think a lot of critics felt that way. A lot of audiences felt that way too. Like, what? They're not even. It's not even necessarily clear that all of her lovers are all still alive. They're never gonna be not dead unless they're staked through the heart, and she doesn't have the heart to kill them. So she locks them away in the cellar, and she even says you can keep. She says to her former lovers, "This is John. Keep him company tonight." Like, what are they supposed to do? These people that have been stuck there for hundreds of years. John, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Yeah.
Is she still a great piece of ass or what? I mean, what are they going to say to him?
I have so many questions. Do they have telepathy in those boxes?
That's what I was thinking.
And did John know that they were in there? Did he know that they were alive? He clearly didn't know that they were still conscious. Right, because he was like, "Kill me, Miriam," because he thought it could end until that very moment.
Yeah. So those are always up there in the top.
Yeah,
so
she
they've been
just
living
keeps
together,
them.
and she's just been dragging these boxes across everywhere
I
they
mean,
go. I mean, does he ever ask what are in the boxes? I don't know.
Did he? Yeah, I mean, maybe it's don't ask, don't tell. I don't,
Just wonder.
Shoes. It's all shoes.
It's shoes.
It's all shoes.
Yeah, and that's something you never a woman's shoe closet. I'd never go in.
I mean, either you don't want to go
It's
there.
off limits, man. Men know their place. No shoes. My moderator Tom Jr. Jackson says, "Rob, I keep getting asked when you're coming on my channel. Tom, I know we got to set up an actual time. Maria Spino on Tuesday. Hopefully you'll come on. Maybe Lana and Alan. Yeah, that we could work something out. This is a good one. Poopshootriot. Pardon me. Poopshootriot, not Patriot. Says, I'm late to the show. I just watched both extraction flicks. Have any of you watched The Sadness? I did. I just got that on 4K. The Void and a take on the 80s Blob. I love that flick. First of all, The Sadness is a very interesting zombie movie from Singapore. And it's really, 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 really good. And if you haven't seen The Sadness, I think it's on Shudder. It's really good. The Void is a throwback to 80s sort of cosmic horror. And I liked it. I liked The Void. It was kind of low budget, but I really liked it. And then have you guys seen the version of The Blob that came out in the late 80s?
Love the 80s Blob.
It's really good, right?
It's so good. Some of my favorite practical, actually, the effects, when it goes around the bodies and the flesh.
Oh, it's great.
It's so good.
Chuck Russell directed that, who directed the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Erasure.
Really?
Eraser, not Erasure. Eraser's a band. Eraser.
Is that what the alligator? Is that bad CG alligator and they fight? Is that race? Is that the Arnold Schwarzenegger one?
No, that's the one when he has those guns that shoot the.
Isn't there an alligator in that
maybe
movie?
There
too?
is. You know what? You might be right. It's
There's
been
a
so long
stupid
since I've seen
CG
it.
alligator. If I remember right, that just took me out of that one. But yes, the guns. The guns are what it's all about. Yeah, those laser sight things are so good.
Yeah.
No, The Void was great too. It had some of that fun. Those films, it's interesting. I get recommended that a lot. Like, hey, Alan, you love 80s films. You'll love The Void. And I always watch them. Like, and it's good, but it does feel like I made it. I hate to say that. Like, in the sense, it's not. It's a fan thing, and not. It feels like it has the fanness of the 80s, but it's not the 80s. And it's hard for me to tell people that. I have a hard time telling friends, like, thank you for recommending me that, but it's just not. It's not 80s. And I hate to be such a Debbie Downer and all that, but I still enjoyed what they did. I'm really, they're having fun and they're making cool stuff. But no, it wasn't 80s to me. I'd rather watch
I totally know exactly, what you're saying, because you can't. It's really funny. I go back and I watch Stranger Things, and I like Stranger Things.
Yeah.
But it's funny to me that everybody wants to do like a throwback to the 80s.
Yeah.
When it's fine, but and you can try and recreate the 80s as much as you want, but you can't.
I know.
And I think that everybody wants to do it because they grew up watching Goonies or Back to the Future or Nightmare on Elm Street or whatever the hell they were watching, but it's not, or reading Stephen King novels. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel right. I wonder if there was like in the 70s, if people are having, people making films that were so much like the 50s or the 60s. I don't know. Was that a thing happening, or is it just the 80s? We're just stuck in this eternal loop of 80s-ness.
I think we're because the 80s had a really unique blending of everything from music to fashion to the way kids acted. There was a sort of an innocence to it, but even when there wasn't in it, like when kids were bad, they were bad in a cool way, like in Less Than Zero. Yeah. We're going to throw monster parties in Beverly Hills and do a lot of blow and dress fabulously, and everyone's, I mean, there's something about, having lived through it all, it was the 80s were a lot of fun. Yeah. And there was people were just different. And also, I mean, I understand where things are. It's also harder to make movies now because everyone's got cell phones. So how do you create environments where if something bad is happening, you're isolated? I'm just going to call the police.
Done.
I'm just going to what do you do? And that, I think that's actually a real problem. You could just go onto YouTube and this is happening right now. Please send the police. And how do you get around that?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think I had ironically tweeted something like, I only like movies from before cell phones were made.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like going out before cell phones were made. I mean, no one, the shenanigans we got up to in the late 80s and 90s here in LA would never happen anymore because there was no evidence. There was no, nowadays, I wouldn't, there's no way that I would do half the shit I did when I was younger in LA because
you can't parallel park without someone videotaping.
No.
Yeah.
No.
True.
And the thing is, there was also, I think, what was missing, I mean, in terms of eroticism, like when you would go out, you would have to have game. You'd have to be, if you wanted to meet a lovely lady or a nice dude, you had to risk. You had to have an approach that had to work for you, and you had to put yourself out there. Now you can just sit at home and shop on Tinder or whatever the hell you want to do. I'm like, well, I don't know. Nah, okay. I mean, what is that? And it's, I mean, I that's how I met Elizabeth, was online, but there's a whole, and that's the way people do things now. And a lot of the time you meet people that you wouldn't even meet because you would never be in the same, you can be 50 miles away or 100 miles away or in a different, what does OkCupid have? Passport? You can hit Passport and you can find people in different countries.
Oh, okay.
If that's what you want to do. And but that's fine, but it was a different time when you actually had to go somewhere and do something and try and meet somebody and put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
Right? Not just date whoever the best guy is in your local proximity.
Right.
Just make it work.
Yeah, and the thing was, when you go out, what I loved about it was you never knew where the night was going to take you because you had more incentive, like wherever you were going to go, well, we're going to make where we go good. Like, we're not going to spend the night just going from place to place to place looking for some place that's going to fulfill our needs. We're going to make where we're going good. We're going to make the fun happen. And I think people don't have that anymore. They're like, if this place isn't perfect right away, we're leaving. Yeah. And I mean, let's get this party started. Change the music on the jukebox and let's get everybody drinking and dancing and whatever. Yeah. But that was the 80s.
Yeah.
The 80s was where you would go, you're going to make sure the party happened. And if it didn't happen, you were going to take it upon yourself to make sure it happened. And that, I think, is missing from our world. I think our world is less. I mean, when I say erotic, there was not just vampires or sex, but there was an eroticism to everything. You'd go to a concert, you'd go to a restaurant, you'd go to a bar, you'd go to the beach. There was, because people were more present. There was more. You didn't have everything is kind of you see through the lens of a phone now, and it's. I think that's a problem with horror movies too. How do you make a great horror film because you have to figure out a way to neutralize modern communication before the horror begins. And some movies, like one of my favorite horror films of the last 10 years is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. I don't know if you've seen that.
one. Yeah,
Single,
sure.
it's fucking great because it's supernatural horror, but it basically it's in one, well, a couple of rooms.
They're in the dot tap. Yeah, they're in the, where was it? Gosh,
it's underneath. They have got a medical facility, but you have to take an elevator. It's underneath. Yeah. It's like in the giant basement of a building.
Yeah. Was it Speed Racer? Is that the guy? Was that the guy?
Yeah. Emil Hirsch.
Yeah.
Speed Racer. I love it. Speed Racer.
No, that's a great movie too. Yeah, it's interesting too. A lot of horror films take cell phones and they put it into the story. I mean, that's like a whole genre itself. Like the influencers. The cell phones are always part of the story. Oh, the text is like, oh, I'm getting a text, this thing, or they show a live feed of them being killed.
The ones that make it about the tech are the worst.
Oh, I hate it.
Yeah.
Oh, the worst.
Have you guys seen? There's an Australian horror film, and it's got, I want to say it's like, Don't Touch Me. It's got like a weird hand, and what you do is you like shake hands with this thing.
Is that the new one? It's coming out, right?
Yeah, it's coming out.
I saw a trailer. That looks great.
That trailer looks awesome. Really good. I'm like, I'll watch
I'll give that. One a shot.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'll watch, and it looks that looks really, really good. Yeah. Tom Jr. Jackson says, when will you review Teeth? That's an obscure movie. I don't know. Teeth.
We know what's in it.
Yeah.
I know what it is. And I know that Tom knows that I know what it is because he asked me this on Twitter before. And like I said before, Tom, I know what the movie is, damn it.
Yeah, it's
I know.
Steve Langford sent in a super chat, but he retracted his message. Come on, Steve. Why'd you retract your message? What were you going to say?
I have seen worse things. I was made for a fundraiser. We hit a goal and I was made to watch Cats. The latest Cats. And I had to stream watch it. How did I like it? I did not. I did not like it.
Did you see Cats 1.0 like I did? I went on opening day before they did the patch. There was a patch, I guess.
Patch all the buttholes?
They patched the effects, which I have no idea. But yeah, I went with friends. We actually skipped work that morning because we wanted to see Cats that morning. It's fun.
Wow.
Yeah, what a cast, man.
It was something.
I will say they have quite the cast.
Yeah,
quite the cast.
Quite the cast indeed.
So listen, I threw you a couple letters. In advance.
We did not see them.
We did not see them.
Oh, you didn't? Sorry. I did email them to you, though.
Yeah,
you did. You totally
did.
That is our
connecting
fault.
To the show.
But I wanted to get because we're different. We're different generations, I would say. It's fair to say. Different generations. And I think this is actually a good question. I like this question. It comes from Juan. And he says, achieving true diversity and inclusion in Hollywood. Hi, Rob. I'm a big fan, but if you talked about this before, I apologize. People in Hollywood, directors, producers, writers, etc., keep talking about the importance of diversity and inclusion, and I agree, it's important. But they seem focused on telling European stories. How is that promoting diversity or inclusion? Making Snow White or Cinderella, but then making a character Black, Asian, or Hispanic isn't quite the path to diversity, in my opinion. There are wonderful stories from all around the world. Why not tell those stories along with a diverse cast and staff? Let's make more stories like Moana or Aladdin and less stories like Cinderella or Beauty and the Beast. This is something Hollywood doesn't talk about much, moving away from European stories and telling more stories from other parts of the world. I'd like to see more of that. I have often said on this channel, on this show, that I think the more voices that tell stories, the better off we are. The whole premise of this channel is to share stories. I think storytelling is the most potent form of communicating who we are to one another. And I completely agree with that. Like, I love folklore from other countries and other times, and you go to stories and I love hearing, like, I loved mythology when I was growing up, whether it's Greek and Roman mythology or Norse mythology, because every culture has its own mythology and great stories, great fairy tales. And the problem is, look, in America's case, we were founded, and we're predominantly a white nation. That's been changing. You know, the demographics are changing. So we've tended to lean into European tales, but as the demographics, like I love Central American, South American, Hispanic, like the whole lucha vavoom, the whole idea of lucha wrestling, and there's a whole Mexican wrestling. There was great Santos, the great character. Santo would fight vampires and things like that. We didn't get much of that in America, but now those movies are being rediscovered. So what do you guys think about the idea of the thing is, I was talking to you guys about this before too. I often have a problem when somebody who's not from a culture is trying to tell a story from that culture, because I feel it's like not authentic, if that makes any sense.
Sure. So I'm from Hawaii, and I'm not Hawaiian. Like, I don't have it in like there's some argument that I might have a little bit, but let's just say that I don't. And so a lot of people get that confused. They're like, oh, you're Hawaiian. No, I am Hawaii born. I don't feel like I am in the position to tell Hawaiian tales, although I did grow up in that place. So I do know a lot of them. So I do feel more familiar with that. But a lot of the, what we talk about in school a lot is the fact that a lot of these, mythological stories are handed down to us by, our Hawaiian ancestors. They're not written. They're not written stories. They're not written genealogies. We're just doing it through word of mouth. I mean, that is why Hawaiian music exists. It's to pass on the folklore over generations. I'm not saying that is or is not why we lean more into European lore, but they do have a much longer history of having all of their stories written down. So that makes the adaptations a lot easier that way. But then, separate from that, I do feel that way. I mean, there are certain movies that I've never seen. I hear there's a movie called Aloha where Emma Stone plays a Hapa girl like me who is supposed to be Chinese Hawaiian, and I refuse to watch it because to me that feels icky and I don't like it.
And that was made by Cameron Crowe, who made Almost Famous, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
One of my favorite movies as well.
That one hurts.
You guys gotta watch the extended version.
I know. I didn't know it was an extended.
Dude, the extended version is essential.
Is it that extended? Is it very
it's like 25 minutes longer.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
so extended actually. Okay.
It's really, really great. It's on the Blu-ray, so you can get it. But I think that's a really good point. Like, for instance, I remember there was a movie that came out called Utu from New Zealand. It was directed by Jeff Murphy, and it was about a Maori warrior. Well, when I saw it, I want to say I saw it at the Seattle Film Festival. I didn't know anything about the Maori growing up. The South Sea Islanders and the Maori people of New Zealand. First of all, that movie kicked ass. And then they also that was a historical epic, and Once Were Warriors was about modern Maori culture. And like when I saw that movie, I was like, this is something I've never heard before. I didn't know anything about Maori culture. And I thought that I loved it. First of all, it's great. I own it. Actually, it's one of the movies I have on DVD that I don't know if it'll ever get remastered. The same director made a great science fiction movie called The Quiet Earth, and he was a second unit director on Lord of the Rings. But I loved seeing that. And growing up, show me a movie from any part of the world, I'll watch it. And I think that, we have emerging filmmakers in Africa, like in Nigeria, there's an emerging thriving film community, and there's some really interesting stuff happening around the world. But that's what I want to see, because growing up I loved foreign films. But I do think it's odd that Americans we're a little limited in our scope, and I think our as a nation, because we're kind of isolated in a way. I mean, we've got two oceans bordering us, but if you go to Europe, you can get on a train in a couple hours, be in a country that speaks a different language and has different folk tales, and we're not used to that. We're so homogenized, and everybody's got the same big box retailers in their town that they have in every other every other of the 50 states, and we're incredibly xenophobic here in a way. Still, it's like, we don't want the immigrants crossing our southern borders. It's like, well, why not? What are you afraid of? I mean, they're going to bring good food with them and people that are interesting that I don't know, that I want to hear from and I want to talk to. And it's such a weird, it's a weird thing. But how do we do that? Do you think, I think as we have a more emerging, like I loved seeing Parasite win Best Picture.
Oh, that was great. Yeah. That was fun. Friends I normally wouldn't talk about films like from that they were like come up to me, hey, you seen Parasite? I'm like, oh, you saw Parasite? Awesome. It just opens up a whole new audience that wasn't, that would I never thought was there.
Aren't there like diversity requirements now for some of the awards?
Yeah, to get into for the Oscars, which is so weird to me because I think this is something that really bothers me in the sense that America has we have a demographic makeup that you can't get away from. There's only a certain amount of people from each different ethnic background in the country. Like I think Black America is like 13 to 14%. I think that's what it is. But of those people, how many are stupid enough to try and get into Hollywood? I was stupid enough, but how many people of any demographic are stupid enough to try and make it in Hollywood? It's a very small percentage of the population. And of that percentage, how many of us make it and stay here? It's very tiny. So to ask for these, first of all, it is hell to try and make movies no matter who you are. I don't care what shape, size, color, creed you are, religious background, you will get fucked if you try and make movies. It's inevitable. Everybody has a terrible story. I mean, Mel Gibson, nobody wanted to make The Passion of the Christ. He ended up financing himself and made like $1 billion. But nobody wanted to do it. And he's like, I don't have to put up with this. So when Spike Lee made She's Gotta Have It, which is a terrific film, he financed himself. Like he went and I think he was selling shoes to make the money to make that movie. And it's cement. Yeah. I mean, so anybody can make a film, but to have those kinds of requirements is saying that like everybody just wants to make movies. So there's everybody out there. You can hire whoever you want to be on a crew. Those requirements are really difficult because you have to find, there just aren't that many people that want to do the work. You'd think people, everybody thinks there are, but how do you, and then the people that want to do it, how many of them are good at what they do?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
I mean, every kid wants to make video games. I was
going to say, everyone wants to be on YouTube. Make your own show then.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And that's the thing. That's where we're at right now. I mean, you have 4K cameras in your cell phone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's stopping you? No one is prevented from making movies. No one. Yeah. If you're good at what you do, I mean, people are making 16 millimeter movies, in their garage. A lot of the filmmakers that we like today, Sam Raimi, he was in college when he made The Evil Dead with his buddies. The first Evil Dead it had a wit and a verve. I mean, the opening shot when the camera's gliding over the swamp, they put it on a 2x4 and just walked it over the water. I mean, and now you've got the technology, whatever technology you want or need. It's available. But I do think that, look, the stories that we all have to tell one another, the more people that can tell stories, I think the better off we are. Mm-hmm. Again, from all around the world, there's so many great, I think the real problem with America now, especially in Hollywood, is that everybody wants previously existing material because it's less of a risk.
Yeah.
Disney's making live action versions of their beloved animated properties because everybody already knows them. There's already a built-in audience, and for the most part, they've worked. Like the live action Jungle Book or Lion King, those made lots of money. Beauty and the Beast, the Aladdin, and what's interesting to me, nobody said anything about Will Smith being a genie because he was blue.
That's right.
No one ever went, you can't. You're replacing Robin Williams. You can't do that with Will Smith. Nobody cared because it's a blue genie. It's it's a magic. Yeah. So that's why the Halle Bailey is terrific as a Little Mermaid.
Yes.
And she's a fucking great singer.
Mermaids aren't Irish or red-haired, okay? They're imaginary creatures.
Fish.
They're fish people.
And plus they moved her down to the Caribbean. She's not even in the North Atlantic.
There you go.
Done.
You wanted a scientific reason for her to be darker. There you have it.
Yeah.
But she could be anything. I don't see anyone complaining that black people have white hair in House of the Dragon.
That's true.
Or whatever.
Well, who knows?
Well, it's funny. I can understand on one hand there's a lot of pandering going on, trying to, but on the other hand, I think that it's weird how people are getting triggered about these things, and it's kind of bizarre because, and I always go back to the Aladdin. Nobody cared. Nobody cared that Will Smith was not Robin Williams, and not one and that movie made $1 billion. the live action version. And Will Smith was great. He was different than Robin Williams, but he was great in that role.
Yeah, it was surprisingly good. I mean, I it was like better than the '90s one, but I enjoyed it. Yes.
And Guy Ritchie directed that,
which is such a weird thing, but good for him. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. He could
I just think, look, here's what I want. I just want something that's good. As long as it's good, I don't care who made it. I don't care who stars in it. I just want something to be good. Just make it good. Yeah. And it's weird because there was all kinds of different, like I use my favorite example is the Shawshank Redemption.
I was just gonna.
She just typed Shawshank in the browser.
Yes, because I'm actually reading it now, and all I hear from the narrator is Denzel Washington.
Oh,
but in the novel, he's Irish.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. And they retained the line. Why do they call you Red? Maybe it's because I'm Irish. Because he was a ginger, and it's nobody. I've never heard anyone ever say that. Well, they race swapped Morgan Freeman's character. Right. He was white in the story. And by the way, I read that story. That was originally in an anthology called Different Seasons that came out in 1982. I read that story every year at Christmas for a decade. I would sit down and read Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption every Christmas because I just love that story so much. And the movie is one of the great Stephen King adaptations of all time. It's
so good.
It's so good. Nobody cares. I mean, if the movie's good.
Yeah.
I think the problem is sometimes people's agendas get in the way of their storytelling, and that becomes problematic. But somebody should make Being from Hawaii the Madame Pele. Is it Pele?
Yeah, Pele.
I want that. Where is that? Somebody has got to make the ultimate Madame Pele movie. Maybe she doesn't have to blow up, Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, but she could. I mean, I want to. No one's made the ultimate Madame Pele movie. Like, talk about an erotic, seductress, fiery personality. Somebody, some guy comes and he's staying at the Kahala on Oahu. He's got all this money, and he meets this chick out on the beach once, and it's her. I mean, and they have
ultra possessive of him.
Yeah.
So I don't know the story at all, so this is awesome. Well, this is a movie I want to see.
These are just character traits. This is just something that Pele would do. So Pele is known as being very, very possessive and very vindictive as well. So she's like an older sister, and she always has to have all the attention. She has to have all the men, and so she'll often fall in love with mortals. And if the mortal, his affection changes, she will bring hell upon him and all his family, and turn him into a plant.
You could be a good Madame Pele.
Oh, thank you. Got the red hair, the fiery temper.
I mean, you could do that.
Got the big ex-boyfriends. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Well, they're actual pigs.
Now this is a letter. When I get letters like this next one, it's one of the reasons I like to do this channel, and I'm glad that I'm going to read this with you two here because it's hard to explain sometimes when people write me letters like this how much they mean to me. But I'll just read this. It comes from Ivan, and the headline is "The Power of Movies." Hello to Robert and to all the community. I've been a big fan of yours ever since the Collider Heroes days, and I would like to share some thoughts on the power of movies and how it can change lives. I was always introverted, with movies being my escape. My sister was similar, and we shared this love for them. We watched many of them together and would later discuss and fight about them. They certainly made my life easier and more manageable, but they did even more for her. You see, she was assaulted a few years back, and it left really big emotional scars. She became more of a recluse and was not the same happy person she was before. The only time she was happy basically was going to the cinema with me or sitting on the couch watching some film together. We liked to pick a director and go through their filmography. My favorites were Wong Kar-wai and Andrei Tarkovsky. Hers were Jean-Luc Godard and Mia Hansen-Løve. Well, until we started watching Zack Snyder movies. Yes, I know. It sounds crazy, but this is not a joke. I always kind of liked him, but I never fawned over him. He's clearly very talented, but I sometimes thought his movies were a little messy. One night, we put Sucker Punch on the TV. By the end of that movie, I never saw my sister become so emotional. She could not stop the tears. When the film finished, seeing how she was, I just hugged her, and we stayed like that for some time. Now, when I go to have dinner or lunch with her in her apartment, more often than not, Sucker Punch is playing in the background. And I didn't understand quite why she was so obsessed with that movie. When she was ready, one day, we played the movie again, and she walked me through it, explaining every second as it happened, the detail behind it, and what it meant for the story. Now, when the movie ended, I was a crying mess. Understanding what she saw and the layers behind the story made me appreciate Snyder a lot more. Countless hours of therapy and dozens of changed medications, but nothing helped her and made an impact on her life more than this movie. Upon reading more on it, I found a lot of testimonies saying similar things. Not only on Sucker Punch, but on other Snyder movies. I guess why this guy has such a passionate fan base. This is my testimony on how movies can change a life. They certainly did for my family. If I ever get to meet a famous director, well, besides you, Free Enterprise is so much fun, I would love for it to be Zack Snyder. It would be a little awkward, but I would love to just hug him and then thank him for bringing my sister back to life again. Have a great day, Rob. Looking forward to your panel show. Which, by the way, I hope to have you two on that panel show when we start it. But I never would have thought that Sucker Punch would. But I keep hearing that this is something that I've heard before, but to hear this kind of confirmation, because that movie is about these girls that are being abused in this facility, and it's about their escape. And I think a lot of us have misunderstood it. I know that even Elizabeth and I reviewed it on Let's Whining About Movies, and after reading this letter, I felt kind of guilty that I did that. But I mean, what do you guys think? I know that certain movies can be real touchstones for people and help them through trauma and times of trouble. Has that ever happened to you at all? And do you have any experiences like that, or know anybody like that?
Oh gosh, like a movie that did that. First of all, that's amazing, because I also am guilty of making fun of Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
I mean, I have not seen it though. I will admit, I've only seen the trailers.
But you've never seen it?
I know, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible
You're a
person.
horrible person.
I'm like everyone on the internet. I'm sorry.
Just because Zack Snyder did it.
I have two hot toys from Sucker Punch.
Okay, well there we go. Well,
I mean, that's not euphemism. The company Hot Toys, they made.
Okay.
They made figures.
I'm still waiting for my RM hot toy, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that was not a fake request. That was real. So.
But yeah, wow. What a movie have I mean, I've never had a deep experience like that with a movie, to tell you the truth.
You never watched a movie that you like so much you got it tattooed on your body?
Well, there's things that are, but mine is not as deep as that. Mine's more just like personal. Like I was telling her, like Ghostbusters to me, again, as a kid, it was a fun sci-fi monster shooting things, and the setting was cool and all the fun tech in that world. And then as an adult, it spoke to me in a different level, as entrepreneurs, three entrepreneurs starting a business. The dry, sarcastic humor, and how they're trying to just kind of falling into this is saving the world. They fell into saving the world. Something that I feel more as an adult that way, and how I want to always start a business, start something new with my friends and make those things. It's one of the few movies that's ever done that for me, where it kind of both different parts of my life, it spoke to me. But it wasn't like that's a very powerful thing that was written in that letter. And I'm trying to think of anything. If I know anyone, I know in our video games we have that happen actually. This happens a lot, because people spend like 80 hours or more on one of our games, right? And we've had
what are some of the games? What are some of the games you worked on people might recognize?
Game. Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ones. I've worked on. Well, the things I've worked on early on was like Metroid, which isn't really a story game.
Did?
Yeah, Metroid on the DS. I was going to keep going. The DS on the DS. I did the launch one. If you bought a DS, you got a copy of this Metroid that was free. So my game was free. It was a pack-in. It was a demo. and then we made it a real game afterwards. But
Where's
yeah,
that
and
movie,
then
man? Come on, I want a Metroid movie.
yeah, I think Proyas was going to make one once. The Crow guy, he was working. He did a commercial at that time. I remember, a live action. If you look for it, you can find a live action commercial he directed for that. But yeah, we did that one. I worked on The Sims. You know, I did the smiley icons over their heads. It's
Really?
it's the worst job on earth. Yeah, just smiley. Yeah, whenever they have a reaction that comes up, I worked on the icons for one of the games on that. And then I worked on
that was so important to me as a child. I just want you to know. It's very impactful for young Lana.
Yes, I worked on that type of stuff.
Celebrity.
But again, there's multiple franchises I've touched different ways. You know, like the cell phone version of God in the War that didn't come out, or something. A lot of things didn't come out. I'll tell you right now. I worked on like a James Bond type MMO that never came out, or a
Really?
yeah,
damn it.
came out. I know, and that was cool. It actually, we had a Q guy who would call you on your real life phone and tell you your stuff is done. That's in the game that's happening. He'd actually call you and say, "Hey, your car's done, Mr. Bond." It's not Bond. It wasn't called Bond, by the way. We called it the agency. It wasn't. We couldn't have
That's
the official
okay.
name. Even though we were Sony. I was working at Sony at the time, and we call it. So it was really cool. And but there's a lot of fun things we work on in the game industry that never comes to life, and no one will ever see ever, and it kills my soul every day. But yeah, anyways, there's a lot of times where I worked on one game. I remember I was selling her a pet game, and it just came out in beta. It didn't even get full release. It was like a sci-fi, almost Pokemon type thing. But you raise these little pets and you name them, and there's a little community as they were beta testing. And we'd have fans that were really into it. They'd come in the studio and they'd say hi and like, "Oh, this game changed my life." It's like I have some disability. I'm going through some really bad health issues, and this is all I have to get me through my day. And I love this little pair of bunny ears you drew for this dog. And I remember when I was drawing, I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm drawing a pair of bunny ears for a dog," and I'm like, "This is my life." I've signed up to draw bunny ears on dogs, and I know I didn't think of anything. I just saved it off, gave it off to put it in the game, checked it, made sure it was right, and then I went home, and then
and it was meaningful for them.
And then when you meet people who tell you those bunny ears change, it's very important to them, and they even like cosplay as it or something like that. It brings a whole new perspective to what you do,
Right?
And because I thought it was just throwaway. Everything I was doing was like a next step to the next thing.
And that game is old and
no, there's like fan base trying to recreate the game. Even I found out they contacted me they found my LinkedIn or something. And they're like, "Hey, we're trying to rebuild the game from scratch." All these fans are actually trying to rebuild this thing, and because they were all young when they played this beta, just the beta of it. It wasn't a full release
it's
of this
like
game.
off-brand Neopets.
But they're all a huge community trying to rebuild it by scratch by trying to recreate drawings I've done, like recreate the right things I did and everything. And they're like asking me, "How did you do that?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is insane." And some of them have actually work in games now, or even like professional artists. Probably way better than me even. But that little pair of, again, bunny ears inspired them to get where they are. So there's things like that make me happy. Something I didn't expect when I fell into this line of work, that keeps me going more than I thought. It's just really sweet and makes me feel good. So,
well, yeah, it's interesting. You never know. I've had that response with things I've made. A lot of people still, Free Enterprise is out of print. I can't, I wish I could get it back into print. We're trying, but people have come up to me, and I just got an email from a guy that said he and his wife bonded over it, and he said, "Is there anything that you could send me? Like, can you send me?" And I said, "Well, I've got like a couple more of movie posters left. Some of the original movie posters. Like we had put out these 4 trading cards, and a couple of years ago, a guy contacted me. He's like, "I can't get the Shatner trading card because it was only in the soundtrack album that was the soundtrack CD, and I don't have any more of those." And I found a couple. I found a box, and like I contacted him, and I said, "Hey, man, I found."
Wow, I bet you made his whole day.
Yeah, and he was like, "Oh my God," And what's interesting is when people ask you for stuff and you send it to them, it's not like they call you back up. Like they've asked you, and you kind of want to hear them go, "This is awesome, dude. Thank you so much." And people don't do that. And I don't know what I expect to see somebody with a trading card, like, taking a picture.
Kind of.
I know it's it's kind of like what did you do with this trading card that I gave you? And it's interesting because I'm a big collector of stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that I collected that eventually you get to the point where you're like, what am I going to do with this? You know, I don't, and it's only going to mean something to me. Nobody's going to care. But this guy that contacted me recently, but the funny thing is he told me his wife's name, but he didn't send me his address.
Oh,
so I wrote it back. I'm like, bruh, where am I gonna send this?
Where's it going?
Where's it gonna go? I don't know. You know, but it's interesting when people tell you that. It's you know, it's always good. Whatever you've worked on, and you never know. You never know. Like, there's a movie I worked on. The first movie I ever worked on as an editor was this low budget full moon movie called Arcade, and John DeLance.
I've seen part of that. I've seen part of it. I don't know how I saw it.
Yeah,
I think you were on the stream you were talking about. I was like, oh my god, I have seen part of that.
Yeah, but there's one guy who has like a whole page dedicated to it on Facebook.
Oh really?
You know, and it's like, really? You know, you because you never know. I've worked on so many different things that I forget that I even worked on. Because, you know, when you're working on stuff, you work on it and then it goes away, and then there's something else that replaces it and it goes away. Other than like that project I was telling you about today, things pop back up. You know, nothing ever goes away entirely. You just keep trying to make it until you are dead, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the life that we signed up for, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I never want to retire. I mean, Clint Eastwood's directing his last movie is 93.
Oh. Yeah, we were talking about Tarantino earlier. He says that my final film. I'm like, yeah, bullshit. That ain't going to be your final film. You're going to be making films until you're just.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where he's coming from. That he says that I don't want to become one of those people that their later films become kind of lame. I get where he's coming from, but he's not that old.
And plus, he's good. I mean, he's still performing really well.
I mean, the funny thing about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when I first saw it, I'm like, that's all right. But now I keep watching it over and over. Yeah, I like it more and more every time I see it. And all of it, I mean, I've loved all of his movies for the most part in different ways. And because his movies are original, but they're also a pastiche of other movies. Unless he's adapting Elmore Leonard like he did with, his third movie with Jackie Brown. But yeah, you know. What are some of, like, if you guys were stuck on a desert island together and you suddenly had a solar-powered home theater system that washed up on the beach, what would be some of your favorite movies?
Ooh,
I thought the question was going to be who eats who first. I'm ready. I'm not ready for this one. Unexpected. Oh, no.
There's no wrong answer. Okay, who eats who? Oh. After one of you has eaten the other, you've got 10 movies that are remaining.
10 movies remaining. Okay.
10 movies remaining.
A lot of the stuff I feel like is what we've been through in our journey of film, like early on.
I don't know, man.
You fell in love with a lot of films.
Some crazy stuff.
I could name a few you do like True Romance is one of the ones
I do.
You did.
I do love True Romance.
Love that.
It's a great movie, and it's romantic.
That's romantic.
You're so cool.
Yeah,
You're so cool.
You love that one. What was another one?
I loved it before it was cool. Well, it was already cool.
Yeah.
Before the Kardashians knew what that movie was.
Oh yeah.
Ruined.
What else was there? There was. I know you have some other movies you really
like
love.
all the zombie ones. Obviously, Evil Dead 2.
You love Evil Dead 2?
I
She fell in love with that one.
I actually watched Return of the Living Dead Part 2 a lot.
That one's really fun.
That was really
a good
fun.
movie.
I couldn't believe how fun that was. It was just fun.
The dancing on the gravestone. Yeah, that's quite iconic.
Well, just the fact that like the reason the zombies are there is not really explained. It's not important.
Yeah.
We're just here. We're here in the apocalypse. This is what's up.
It's fun.
Yeah, I love that.
If you like zombie movies, you've got to watch The Sadness.
Oh, really?
Oh,
okay.
Put in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you seen Train to Busan? You must have seen.
Oh yeah.
I haven't.
No,
I haven't.
That's fun.
Everyone always asks me that.
I have a hard time with because I've worked on I work on a zombie game right now, and I've been working on it for 8 years, and I've just zombies. I start watching, I'm like, oh, here we go, and even if it's like really creative, I still just like, oh my god, here we go again. And that's just my own dark, long staring at zombies every day.
It's hard for me because I love all zombies.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies ever is the original Dawn of the Dead.
Oh yeah,
Romero's
fantastic. Yeah, that's the stuff we love. That's the stuff we always talk about at work. But yeah, no, I think for me, obviously I'm a very 80s sci-fi comedy guy, actually, which is very, obviously Ghostbusters, but Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, I think, is one of my all-time favorites. It's a lot of all-time favorites for people.
Yeah, I mean, Back to the Future has such a great script.
It's so good.
It's tight
It's
as
only
a
one
drum.
I've read. Yeah.
It's such a great script. It's so beautifully made, and it's a perfect. I think it's a perfect movie. There's nothing in Back to the Future that isn't
That's
perfect.
what you said to me.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong in it. It's just it's excellent across the board, and I mean, and other good ones. And I just love that. And again, I'm a big fan of tech, which is a weird thing, but the old way tech was built, like in movies, like I could tell what they strapped together to make the thing, because now we have CG, and I have a lot of friends who are very talented, work on big films, and they do the CG, and it's crazy creative, and I can't. It's so alien to me that I can't get connected to the thing they're showing me, right? The design. And I actually say that about any Hollywood 3D creature design you see lately. I feel they're too alien, too far out there, and they don't have things I see that are put on there that I understand in real world. Like, oh, that's a telephone they threw on there and painted it black. I get the idea of the shape. You know what I'm saying? It's like the shapes that we see every day in life. Those are the things that really make us connect with the design. And I think in the 80s, they're really good at that. Or because, well, they didn't have 3D, they had to build these things and strap it together and go for it. I think that's one thing that really keeps me grounded in loving those films from that era. And again, the tech of that time. And I like Last Starfighter was one of my favorite movies at that time because I was a young kid named Alan, and Alex was close enough, so I called it Alan. And when he goes in the stars and the theme, whenever I hear that theme, I pretty much want to cry.
Did you get the new 4K disc?
I did. I bought that right away.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's such a great film, and one of those films that really inspires me. But then I also love the artsy stuff in the 90s, where I really got into my film critique days. I got like John Malkovich was one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, that's surprising.
Just because it was so different. Never seen anything that fun and quirky and interesting, and just so interesting. I love that movie. But yeah, stuff like that is what I would probably go for, is more the 80s stuff, and then the really weird 90s things like that really the touchstones of that time. So
yeah, no. Well, again, movies are also a product of when you see them, and they define you as a person, because you're the movies that you connect with, the storyline or something that means something to you, or there's music, or there's characters, and I've always I've always tried to stress that I think video games, I mean, I've often said this, I think we live in a post-cinema age where video games have supplanted movies, and same with like TikTok. Young kids today they don't connect with movies the way we did. And I think the 90s and the early aughts, because video games, like you were saying, have become so sophisticated, and the narratives of video games, long-form narratives, whether it's The Last of Us or something, The Last of Us could never be a 2-hour movie. And when you're playing The Last of Us, you're investing 10s, 20s, 30 hours, however many hours you're going to invest into a game. Or if you're playing a sandbox game, like, hell, I love Grand Theft Auto 5, and I played that for years. And then I couldn't do online because I was getting killed by 12-year-olds all the time because I was never going to invest the time to get through it. But those video games like Ghost of Tsushima, you play something like that, and it's incredible. And I think that those narratives are what people are connecting with now. Not to say that people still don't love movies and all that, but there's a lot more choices than there were 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, they're living their fantasies. I mean, that's what we make games for, is for you to live your fantasies, right? And
you're the
when you watch a movie.
protagonist.
Yeah, exactly. In a movie, you're watching someone else doing it. So it's an interesting time. And I still think we're very young in narrative and video games compared to film. We still just copy film, in my opinion. We just, here's a cutscene, enjoy. I still think that's the wrong way to go for bringing really bringing this medium to something that'll really shine and blow people away. I think we're still early there, but we're getting there. I think we just got to start playing more. So.
That's what I've said. I've said that the same place that films were in the early 1920s, pre-sound, I honestly believe that's where video games are. Something is going to happen with the advent of coding with AI, whether it's holographic interface, whether it's Apple's Glass, whatever it is they're coming out with. I think in 2027, 2028, the video game industry something is going to happen with gaming and virtual and AR, whatever it is. It's going to explode, and it's going to be exactly what sound did to films in the early or the late 1920s. The same thing's going to happen to video games. It's going to be a monumental leap beyond what that is. I don't know.
Yeah, because we can't do. I mean, graphics. In all honesty, we've hit the point where everything looks great. I mean, it looks real. Fidelity is at such a high. It's easy. I mean, people on Steam are making games that look just like Call of Duty or whatever in like a weekend with their friends. So now it's not about the graphics, about the gameplay and what is the thing that we do different. And that's the thing I hope at least the big game companies I'm part of, we start changing that and start going, okay, we can make the presentation, but let's do something new. Let's do something different. Let's really push this medium to the next level. So that's why I'm still loving games in that sense, is I want to see that. Really
that's why I'm still really loving horror movies. I'm so glad that they're still making good ones, because I love games and I play lots of them, and you can pay me to play a scary one, but if you weren't paying me to do it, I would never play Resident Evil. That shit is terrifying. I love it. I love action RPG. I love going through the story, but I would never do it voluntarily. But I love horror movies. I could watch them back to back.
Yeah.
I was looking at the Apple announcement, and I was thinking, okay, you have, I think eventually, like, imagine if you had, say, a Resident Evil game or a Silent Hill, but you have a combination of virtual and AR in those glasses. Like, what if you could walk down the street you lived in? Yeah. And the gameplay, it's your street, but you overlaid everything in 3 dimensions. And so you're actually outside, but all the gameplay and all in your senses and stuff all around, and you're carrying some kind of a weapon. So all of your senses are telling you that even though you're in your neighborhood, so you know the street, but everything is overlaid with something. Mm-hmm. So you're out in the world. I mean, I'm sure that's coming soon.
I would need so much therapy. I already have a hard time going through my day, remembering a dream I had, remembering that it was just a dream. And that I actually did not have that conversation with someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's too real.
It will be coming though. I mean, there are AR companies, and we have the Pokemon game that was really popular. If you remember that, people walking off bridges.
Pokemon Go, that's still a
trying
thing.
to catch
That's
a Pokemon.
Absolutely still a thing. Yeah.
That was a thing that happened, and I know those companies are working on things like that. The exact thing you're saying. So,
yeah.
But I do think it just depends, because again, I think the technology is still, you put a VR thing on and it takes you out of, even though you can see through the world, you're still in this device. It's still not a very it's not an easy experience to just jump into and have fun and have friends with you. Like if we're watching a movie together, there's a very communal feel to it. Even if I'm playing a game by myself, like the single player, you're still watching me and commenting as I play. And it's way more fun to play it that way than just by myself and really sit down and get in this mode of a VR helmet on my face.
Yeah, I mean, we got Oculuses to play with, and VR just isn't really.
But eventually they're going to figure out, like, if you have what Humane is working on.
Yeah, if it's like I don't have to.
And they've got lasers that can map out where you are. Like, if you could look around and you could see the world is skinned some way, so when you turn and you look at your friend next to you, like, you guys are out in the world.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
And it's in real time, they're mapping, and it would be whatever land you wanted to exist in, and it's overlaying it on the actual environment. Yeah. So, when you could be whatever, whether it's Star Trek world, and then when it ends, you're just standing in the middle of the street or something. I mean, people are getting hit by cars or whatever, but to do something like that, it could be really, really interesting.
I hope it happens.
I would too. Stephen Langford says, "Have you bought Vanilla Sky 4K on physical media yet?" I have not, but I will. By the way, Vanilla Sky is a remake of a Spanish movie called Abrio los Ojos, which is a great movie, and Penelope Cruz is in both of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you should watch that. Awesome movie. What did you think of it? I loved it. Repo Man had a similar twist ending. Thank you, sir. Now, the Repo Man that you're talking about is different than the Repo Man so Repo Man is different than Repo Men. Repo Man is a science fiction movie. Repo Man, I guess, is a science fiction movie too. But one is from the 80s and one is from... Yes, Jude Law.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, that's right. I never watched it.
So we're talking about the punk rock Repo Man that stars Emilio Estevez and Harry Dean Stanton and Olivia Barish and Flea and many other people and Laurie Walters. But Repo Men is a full-on sci-fi film, so different. But yes, definitely twist ending. And I'm going to get Vanilla Sky. I love Vanilla Sky. Cameron Crowe made that. Tom Cruise is great in it, and I really like that film. Our friends at the Fantasmagorium show says, wow, as a Gen Xer, the youngsters are so amazing, but you need to watch The Girl with All the Gifts. That is a great zombie movie.
That is a good movie.
Oh,
That is a great zombie. It's more of the zombies are more Last of Us zombies, more parasitic zombies, but that movie's fucking great.
That was a great movie.
Really good. That's good. Thomas Logan says, I just watched this. Netflix releases a show called Robert Meyer Burnett is Awful. You watch it and learn what the Star or Black Mirror's latest did. What does Bobby do now? Okay, for those of you who don't know, the first episode of the new season of Black Mirror is called Joan is Awful. Have you guys watched it?
I just watched that yesterday.
I watched it.
An episode.
Yeah, I watched it today. I mean, it was a little predictable. I really did like it. I wish they had gone further with the reveal because I was waiting. Come on, Kate Blanchett. Would you not? You should have been in that episode. You know, you should have.
Yeah, we're all, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it was good. I mean, I really did. And I think of all this new I love Black Mirror. But the new season of Black Mirror has been, to be honest, a little disappointing. Mm-hmm. I thought that episode I really liked but they're doing things like the last episode was a Demon 79. I think it's called. I was like, that's not a Black Mirror episode because it has to do with technology. I mean, it's a full-on horror story about the apocalypse and demons. I'm like, that's not really. Yeah. You've gone off the reservation there, buddy. But I did like Joan is Awful. I thought that was really good.
I was just really excited to see that girl from Schitt's Creek, the one who played Annie or whatever. Actually, her real name is Annie.
Yeah, how great was it? It was
oh,
great.
Yeah, she was great.
it was really good. But that was very much a Jen what I want to call it. How it's just very much a Black Mirror story.
Yes.
And that's what
we like. Right.
Yeah, and this season has been I mean,
I actually haven't really tuned in since whichever season had Miley Cyrus in it.
Oh yeah, that was
the last episode that I saw, and it was good. It was really
good. I really liked that episode.
Yeah.
I mean, Black Mirror was the first episode I watched was the national anthem when the guy fucks the pig. I mean, I could not believe that was on TV. I'm like, oh my God. That first season of Black Mirror was mind blowing.
Yeah, I think that had like the bees as well. Like, did the first season have the one with like the bees?
That was that 90-minute like X-Files episode. That was fucking incredible.
Yeah, I think. Oh, but it could not have been as good. Black Christmas is the best episode.
That was great too. The bees one was called Hated in the Nation.
Wow.
But the Christmas with John Hamm.
Yes.
That was so good.
Dude, that was heart-wrenching.
It was so good. And San Junipero, when they're in the that was really good.
That's my best friend's favorite one. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Wow, I'm glad you are a Black Mirror fan.
I'm a Black Mirror fan, but we just started watching Love and Robots, right? Is that what it's called?
Oh, there's a lot of good stuff in there too.
In there. Yeah, there was some fun stuff in there too.
We've been preserving it though. Like, okay, we have to be very focused. We have to like be in the right mindset. And we do it very sparingly because there aren't that many.
There isn't that many, yeah, that one too. And Twilight Zone, I've been showing you Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I've been visiting all the old Twilight Zone as well.
Because I'm a big fan of that.
It's great. Well, it's okay. What are some of your favorites?
Mine are actually.
There are no wrong answers.
The Invaders is one of my favorites, actually.
So good.
That's
one
of my
the little people and
race of giants here.
It's so good.
That's a different one then, because I was thinking it's the little people who invade that woman's house.
That's the Invaders. You're right. Yeah. And that flying saucer, that is that's the model of the C-57D from the movie Forbidden Planet.
Oh,
that's the actual model they use in that. Yeah,
you just reused that, huh? Nice, I love it.
That's so cool.
Oh, that's great.
That episode. So that's such a great episode.
Like the monsters on Maple Street or something like that, or. You know,
I think if I could guess your favorite one that you showed me.
Oh, and then the other one, obviously. You can say, you know the name of it, right?
I don't know the name of it.
It was with Time. Remember?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of it though.
Time Enough at Last.
Yeah, there you go. He knows
it. Was that one though.
No,
I know it, of course.
I have to say that I think that the Twilight Zone is one of the greatest. If you want to learn how to write. To tell stories because of there's 5 seasons. It ran from 59 to 64. the Twilight Zone, only the fourth season was an hour long, and a lot of those don't work. But that half-hour format, you have to establish a character or characters, establish a premise, and tell a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end in less than 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the great writers on that show, it wasn't just Rod Serling. You had people like Charles Beaumont, and you had Robert Bloch, and you had so many great, Richard Matheson, George Clayton Johnson. A lot of those writers went on and wrote on the original Star Trek.
Oh, yes.
And there's 157 original Twilight Zone episodes. And what you should get, there's a guy named Mark Scott Zachary, and he wrote a book. I went through 3 copies because I read these books to death, literally to death. His book, The Twilight Zone Companion, is a background. It's an exhaustive. It's one of the most fun books you'll ever have because you can watch the episode and then read. It's all broken down episode by episode.
Did it come with the DVD once? Did it come
Yes.
with the DVDs?
Yes.
I did. Okay, I bought that. I had that.
You have that.
I
Yes.
watched it with it because I got into Twilight Zone actually from the Sci-Fi Channel, which is crazy. But they would do the New Year's Eve marathon.
They were the best.
So good, and that's what I would do every New Year's Eve. My friends would go and party. I would actually stay home and watch Twilight Zone, which is sad.
Yeah, but you have Lana, so you won. You won.
I did win.
You won
but,
that competition.
Yay.
I know. She's like, "Yeah, I want to go out." Anyways, but yeah,
Yeah, you want to party.
yeah. I don't do it anymore. But back in the day when I come home from college or school, I watch it, and it's just I just rewatch the same episodes over and over, and they just hold up so well.
The music in a lot of those was incredible as well.
So good.
A lot of one of my favorite Twilight Zones. The first Twilight Zone episode I ever saw was To Serve Man.
Oh, yeah.
The Canamet episode, and I was like 5. I've discovered Star Trek and the Twilight Zone. It was like they were on Channel 11 in Seattle.
Okay,
and Star Trek was on every night at 6, and then Twilight Zone was on the weekends. And I remember watching because I would watch anything with a spaceship, and they use footage from it's either from Day the Earth Stood Still or Earth versus the Flying Saucers. And I was like, oh my god, a spaceship! And then of course the Canamet shows up and. Congress or whatever, or maybe it's the United Nations, and I think it's the United Nations, and he gives the book To Serve Man, and I was like, wow, aliens have come to help us. And I'm like 5 years old, and then when that woman comes going, Mr. Chambers, it's a cookbook. Even at 5 years old, I was like, holy shit, I'm like, fuck. I didn't say fuck. I don't think I knew that word then, but that's how I felt. I'm like, oh my god. And it was interesting because I saw Planet of the Apes, Star Trek, and the Twilight Zone all like at the same time when I was like 5 and 6, and that it's shifted my brain.
That must have
It
shifted
made
your brain.
you.
Yeah, that's
me.
Why you are who you are.
Well, listen, I don't want to keep you. It's midnight. We've been on for 2 hours, but this was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and it'll give you guys a taste when we start this panel show. What it'll be like to have you guys on it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna be on the panel show.
We'll work it all out, and then you're. By the way, Alan and Lana have been doing Lana Yuen reviews. They've been great. I've loved experiencing your journey through psychotronic cinema, and I look forward to you guys branching out, whether it's erotic thrillers, whether it's if you did a Richard Gere series, I'm all for that.
I'm down for that.
I mean, whatever you guys, you don't have to just do whatever you want to do. The Richard Gere thing, I'm telling you, American Gigolo, Officer and a Gentleman, and Internal Affairs.
I think she wrote it down. Right?
I did. I have them all open, all my tabs.
Okay.
Oh
Ready
my
to go.
God! And by the way, don't read about any of these movies before
We
you watch
won't.
them.
We won't. We'll stay away from that. We'll keep
Because
fresh.
American Gigolo is fucking. They're all fantastic.
Okay.
They're all great movies. I mean, they're just, Officer and Gentleman. Here's the thing about Officer and Gentleman. It's a love story. And Richard Gere and Deborah Winger, when you watch it, keep in mind they fucking hated each other when they made this movie.
Oh,
They
okay.
hated each other. And when that movie came out, it was a monstrously huge hit. The song "We're Up Where We Belong," whatever that. It was that everything about that movie. And Louis Gossett Jr., who's the drill instructor in that movie, he won an Oscar. And Keith David, David Keith, who plays Richard Gere's best friend, who falls in love with Lisa Blount, he taught me the phrase in that movie, bodacious tatas.
Oh.
which I'd never heard before. So that's
Used it ever since.
there you go.
Wow.
And I'm
We're
still
looking at the
talking
cast
about
right
it.
now.
And that movie's 41 years old.
Wayne Brady in
He
it.
had an 8-year-old
Interesting.
Wayne Brady and an 18-year-old Rosie O'Donnell.
Wow.
Yeah, can you believe that?
Oh wow.
I think Rosie O'Donnell like works in the factory, and it's set, by the way, in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh.
So
There we
yeah.
go. That's
Okay.
what we need, more of that.
More.
Yeah, see, it's funny to me. This is the thing that cracks me up. Like American Gigolo and Officer and Gentleman. Internal Affairs is a lesser known movie, but American Gigolo like defined a moment in 1980. It was definitely a transition. You had Blondie's Call Me that the movie starts with, and he's, you have Lauren Bacall's in that movie, and Bill Duke is in that movie, and you've got Richard Gere at his most handsome. I mean, when you watch that movie, the guy is, I mean, I'll say it, man. I'd fuck that guy. I would have his character in that movie is so handsome, and the way he dresses, he's one of the most handsome men I've ever seen in a movie, ever. You can't. Take
we're looking
your
at the
eyes
cover
off.
right now,
And
it
he's
is
in
very
officer uniform.
Yeah, the officer.
That's
uniform.
Officer and Gentleman.
Oh, right.
Oh,
What are
she's-
we talking about?
I was talking about American Gigolo.
Oh, right. Okay, I'm back.
I saw the cover for it. It's cool. It's got this film noir
Oh, he's just
shades
shirtless
over his
in
eyes.
this. Great.
Yeah, I mean, it's shirtless. Yeah, what's going on?
American
This looks
Gigolo.
great.
Yeah,
I totally want to see this.
you guys are gonna. All three of these movies are great. You're gonna love all three of them. But if you did Lana Yuen reviews any one of those, you can't lose.
It looks great. We're seeing shirtless pictures of different men.
I'm seeing shirtless pictures of Richard Gere with tattoos on. So
That's not Richard Gere. You're looking at
What? John Bernthal.
John Bernthal.
Oh,
There must be a lot of shirtless men.
Okay,
in this
no.
movie.
Here's what happened. They
Okay.
they made an American Gigolo TV series last year.
Oh, it says 2022. Yeah,
It got canceled after one season. As well, first of all, that is fucking blasphemous. It's blasphemous to try and go. And look, John Bernthal's a handsome dude. I understand, but he's not Richard Gere in American Gigolo. I'm sorry. Just Google Richard Gere American Gigolo shirtless,
Okay, we're doing this.
okay.
It's in our search.
and you'll see. You'll see.
Sorry, I saw the shorts and the ankle weights.
Ankle weights are
Oh
great.
yeah, because he does inverted pull-ups in the movie.
Oh wow,
Okay.
this looks great.
Oh yeah, I'm
I
telling you.
mean, smooth like a baby, but I'm fine with it.
If you want more he's not swarthy in that movie. No,
Swarthy.
he's not that way. He's not the hairy dude in that movie.
Nah, like a little hair on it. Not complaining. I'm just saying.
Put some hair on it.
Well, you
It's a
got
great
Dave
sword.
Grohl
Hair
over
on
there.
it.
It's okay. Come on.
There's a lot of hair
right.
here. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen.
Thank you.
I'm
Anyways,
telling you, you're going to like it. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for moderating, and thanks to everybody who sent super chats. I know it was a small crowd tonight, but it was a late night show. But everyone, you guys were great. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank, of course, Alancinematic, and of course, Lana Yuen for being here. You guys are the best. I love you both, and it's great to have you. And we'll be seeing more of you. I can't wait. I know we might not get a review next week, but
Right.
the week after or whatever, it'll give you time to catch up on the. You'll have the Gearathon.
That's right.
That's true. We can-
You got to have a Gearathon, I expect.
Gonna
And if
put some
nothing else, I
gear.
want to bring you back and maybe do a live show about your Gearathon,
yeah, we
Wonderful.
would be down for that. Absolutely. Yeah.
because that would it'd be fun to do that, because if even like a once a week show or something, but pre-plan it so people could come and watch, because we're going to start whining about movies. Elizabeth and I are going to do whining about movies again.
That's right.
And
Great.
yeah, and
you guys doing first? Did you movie do first or?
I don't know. Well, at least I've got microphones now. Before we only had one mic, and it was not as technically proficient. There's more cameras around here too, so it'll be a much more technically proficient show with our Shure mics. By the
You
way,
got the
Shure
same one.
mics, you guys sound good.
Is the shirt? Is that one
They're
you
the
have?
Shure mics. Yeah.
Zach one. We're still getting the lighting
SN7Bs.
figured out, but yeah.
The lighting looks great. I mean, come on, this looks
a little
good.
dark. A little dark, maybe down here. Might be
Oh
too
my
dark.
goodness.
I don't know. You
I'm
guys
sorry.
look great. I mean,
It's a
this
corner
to
of a
me,
room.
this looks professional to me. I will have my more professional setup. I'm finally cleaning this place up, and I've got so much stuff in here, but I can't function. I need to function more. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. It's funny because I was telling someone at work yesterday that people at work, when we have I have meetings over on a computer over here, and it's just a background of just shows our hallway. It's not professional or anything like that. But when I do it in the living room next to my DVDs, like if I have it behind me like you, then they think I'm more, oh, I know movies now.
Yeah.
It's like I have to have that behind me, or else people at work don't believe I know what I'm doing.
I mean, even this stuff's a mess. I want it more streamlined, and there's more lights and stuff I got to put here. But yeah, but this, I like your kind of, this looks great.
Yeah, well, this has these are taken down. We had like LED panels that actually do things.
You've got little notches here, but these actually normally hang little LCD displays.
This is meant for her. Again, I'm sneaking into her streaming area. This is like this is not meant for me to be in.
Yeah, but this is cool. I mean, this looks because if we do the streaming show, everybody's remotely coming in, and what I want is to have everybody have a cool, background, decent lighting, decent sound. So
okay, we'll keep it real.
Ideal.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah,
we're all about that.
I mean, I know you guys are worried. You guys sound great. I mean,
awesome! Thank you.
It's
let us know if it sounds too loud or weird. We're learning.
No,
I suck at audio. So
audio stuff. No, it sounds great. I don't know. I'm not good at it either. But it's you guys. It sounds great. Well, awesome. I want to thank you all for being here. And this was great. And I will let you go. I'm going to read a few more letters, but I'll let you guys go now because it's past midnight.
Sounds great. We'll be listening.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I will see you both later. And once again, Lana, Alan, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Good night, guys.
See you guys later.
All right. I love those two. They're fantastic people. And I'm glad everyone else seems to love them too. But even if you didn't, I wouldn't care because I love them and that's all that matters to me. So, that's what I say. But yeah, so I want to read a few more letters. I've got a few more letters from people because that's, as you know, part of the fun of this show is reading letters. So this one comes from William Larochelle. This is a good one. Managing fan bases. It's tough to navigate these waters, I just want to say. You never know what's going to happen. First, I want to say that the title, The Imagination Connoisseurs, is a good name for your podcast or new YouTube discussion show. Perhaps more so than a book of short stories. Now, for those of you who wonder, we are going to, when the panel show is launched, we are doing a short story contest that we started almost 2 years ago. The people that have sent in short stories, well, let me finish this letter and I'll get back to that. This may have already been answered and I missed it, but will the 15 or so entries that were previously submitted be folded into the current or upcoming call for short stories? Yes, they were. Were they all read at least by someone from your team? Yes, they were. The chart never indicated any is read, only received. Yeah, we didn't. We flaked, and I apologize that. But everyone who sent in a story, your story counts, and it's in. On another note, whether a group of people is called fans, imagination connoisseurs, geeks, nerds, fanboys, the audience or the market or demographic, it seems that various pundits are tempted to ascribe or assign values or behavior modes to them. The pet peeve I have is that for all the use of the term punching down, the most toxic behavior comes from the golden bullhorn of well-budgeted marketing machines and millionaires living the dream who routinely throw shade on disgruntled fans to create a stigma around voicing of legitimate concerns about an upcoming show or something that has already created lasting damage. I might be genuinely interested in learning how exactly a Reva survives 2 lightsaber stabs in the gut from Darth Vader. Maybe Rey could survive with her Jesus healing power, but too much online time and attention has gone to making it about Reva's race or gender and not her scowling line delivery. I don't mind calling myself by the term disgruntled Star Wars fan. I recently saw a video of one of your friends going full Grace Randolph, and so it is worth... Now, to be honest, I don't know enough about Grace Randolph to know what full Grace Randolph means. I just want to be clear on that. I know Grace Randolph. I've watched Grace Randolph, but I don't know what full Grace Randolph means. And so it is worth saying that even if I don't agree with someone or I prioritize my concerns about the world in a different ranking, this does not mean that I'm asleep or unaware. It just means that there are clashing goals, whether or not there are still areas of common ground and cooperation. Whether Disney or Kurtzman, the problem happens where an IP is not valued for its own sake, but only as a platform or a delivery device for superficial shows of change or modern colonization or colonialism, placing something or someone into a world that causes this element to upstage everything else. I saw the Willow series and thought it was all right, but it was less about Willow and Allura, two very legitimate characters, than the daughter of Sorsha and her girlfriend. Well, William, that's actually a thoughtful letter. I like this letter. And I want to thank you for writing in. Okay. See this here. Here's my frustration. Here's my frustration as a creator myself, a pundit, a fan, and all of these things. On one hand, there are a lot of people, marginalized voices, minorities, different kinds of people that have not had the opportunities to enter, especially the entertainment business. This is a fact. There's no dispute about this. So and America doesn't exactly have a great track record when it comes to, I mean, hell, the one thing about America that you know about is that at some point everybody hated everyone else. I mean, when the Irish, after the potato famine, everyone hated the Irish. People hated the Italians. People certainly hated the Jews, which I can attest to firsthand. People were prejudiced. They didn't think that black African slaves were even as human as they were. They hated the Chinese who were building the railroads. So they interned our Japanese American brothers and sisters because we were at war with Japan. America has a history of hating everybody. And I'm sure that's true around the world. I've been around the world. Everybody hates somebody else, which is, in my estimation, kind of dumb, because there's great things to experience about everybody. So that said, knowing that we come from a legacy of hatred, there are people that missed opportunities, that never had opportunities because of their skin color, their belief system, whether it was political, their sexuality, religious, whatever. There are people that have been discriminated against, and we are trying, how we're trying, I think America, now that we are aware more about this, that societally we are more aware than ever of the fact that so many different kinds of people have been discriminated against for so long. And there is an impulse to make that right. And I agree with that impulse. I'm not saying that I'm going to stand up for all reparations or something like that for all the past wrongs, because where does that end? And how far back do you go? And I'm not saying that, but I am saying that there are a lot of people that suffered for a very long time for various reasons. And I think that there is an impulse, and a good impulse, to try and alleviate those past, call them horrors, call them what you want. So there is an impulse that people want to make things right and allow those who didn't have a voice to have a voice. I am 100% in agreement with all that. I think, and I know that we'll get great stories from the people that are given a voice. I know that's true. And I'm going to get great stories that I haven't heard before, that movies I want to watch, books I want to read, comics I want to experience, video games I want to play. We're going to get different and new stories. And we will. The problem that I see is that now everybody wants to get credit for solving all of society's ills. We're going to solve them all with each and every TV show or movie or video game or comic or novel, whatever. We're going to solve them all now. So the impulse is for everybody to show that they're trying to help alleviate this long-standing problem. And I'm totally in agreement with that idea and impulse. More power to everybody. The problem is, and we have seen it on every level of storytelling, what has happened is people's impulse to want to do good has replaced their impulse to first want to tell a great story. Because here's the thing. The worst thing in the world is a story that is compromised and it isn't true to itself. And, I see that the idea to help and to give voice to marginalized voices, always a good thing. But those marginalized voices need to be able to tell their own stories. Just to put people into positions to be there, that doesn't really help. What we want to do is to empower people to have the ability to tell their own stories and bring those stories to the masses in a way that is palatable and exciting and worth telling and worth sharing. The problem is, it's really fucking hard to do that. It's really difficult. So it's a conundrum. On one hand, you want to give people voices, you want to have inclusion, you want to make sure that there is a more diverse voice, more diversity in the kinds of stories being told, more diversity of the people involved. Great. But diversity does not make good stories necessarily. Great storytellers and people that can tell great stories in any medium, whether it's games, novels, comics, music, movies, well, that's hard. And that takes talent. And that's never changed. And being a great storyteller, great stories and great storytelling great stories can be told by anybody. Shape, size, color, creed, you just have to be a great fucking storyteller. And that's what we all want. And the thing is, it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do. So I think we're now living through an era where people's desire to do good, and I think it is a real genuine desire to do good, is coming before the impulse to tell great stories. Or they're saying, if you want to tell your story, you have to do these other things that come before telling the story. You have to have, like, it's the Oscars. You can't win a Best Picture unless you've already done these things. And my question to you is, like, what does that have to do with storytelling? And you're interfering with the kinds of stories that can be told. You're saying that, I can't tell a story about a certain... What if I wanted to tell a story about Britain in the late 1760s? And it was a story that was predominantly where all the players were white. Then you have to go stick in, or you want to tell a story. What's really interesting is you can tell any story you want about certain areas. It depends who the people are. And we've marginalized, it's like these more oppressed people are better than these less oppressed people that are better than it's such a weird idea. I don't believe in any of that. I think what we need to do is give people voices and give them the opportunity to tell their greatest stories. And make sure we develop a audience for those stories. And everybody wants to hear a great story. I don't think anybody really cares what color somebody is, what their sexuality is, what their religious background is. Not if they're a great storyteller. Because we'll listen to any stories. You see that with stand-up comics. Nobody cares whether stand-up comics are black, white, straight, gay, old, young. All they want is to hear great comedy. And to me, great comedy is, especially stand-up. I love watching stand-up. And you know what? I think most people will watch any stand-up comedian. And if they're funny, no one cares who they are. No one cares what color they are. No one cares what their political affiliations are. They'll watch if someone's funny. And that's the whole thing. And whether they're funny or not, it's one person on a stage with a microphone telling jokes. And the only thing they need to do is be funny. And everybody watches. And it's really hard to do. And you know what? Stand-up comedy is first of all, stand-up comedy is great storytelling. There's a lot going on for somebody to do great stand-up. You have to be really smart. You have to be really insightful. You have to be an observer of the human condition. And great stand-up comedy, man, I can't think I could never do it. I tried it once in my life. I was actually not bad, but I did it one time in my life when I was in college. And it was so hard. It was so intimidating. And to me, that's proof. The proof is in that pudding. And look, what's really funny is people don't get triggered by the person necessarily telling the jokes. They get triggered by the jokes themselves. It's the stories and the material that get people angry when people do get angry, not necessarily the comedian. And that's when you see like certain interest groups will get mad, like Dave Chappelle, one of the greatest comedians who ever lived. Look at who gets mad at him. Various different groups get mad at Dave Chappelle. A black man who's been doing comedy since he was in his teens. The man has put in the time. He's one of the greatest social storytellers, one of the great observers of people, and damn funny. A lot of people don't like him. But so to me, we now live in a world where anybody can tell great stories, but they're compromised by the people that want to do good. Their first impulse is a good one, I think. The problem is they're putting their agendas before their stories. And William, that's my thoughts on that. And I understand everybody's frustration, but I wish it would be understood. And you know what? The corporations are realizing too. At the corporate level, the corporations want to appease everyone as well because they want to sell their products to the masses. But now they're realizing that that's a lot more complex. You can't just pander. You can't pay it lip service. You're either all in and you get behind something or you don't. And you can't just decide fashionably so, let's support this cause or let's support this marginalized group and it doesn't work. Honesty is the best policy. Great storytelling, you cannot lie. I mean, great liars tell great stories, but in terms of our entertainment on the grand scale, you cannot compromise your storytelling for your social agenda. It doesn't work. And that's what we're all living through. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing corporate entities try and pander to get the biggest possible audience and to curry favor in the various social groups. Doesn't work. Concentrate instead, and all of us fans want that. We want great Star Trek. We want great Star Wars. We want great Doctor Who. We want great MCU. We want great DCEU. We want great animated movies. And the thing is, we all know what's great. We can see it. We've had to live through over the last, 10 years. Well, I think people with good intentions are trying to tell stories to right some of the wrongs. But you do that within the story that you're telling, not with the tools you're using to tell the story. And that's what I would say. It's a different thing. I just want great, honest storytelling. And so does everyone else. Because the irony is, when you see these weak-ass attempts to curry favor with whomever at the expense of the story you're telling, we all see it. Every group sees it. Every shape, size, color, creed, ethnicity. We all know, and you're like, come on, man. Come on. You're not being honest. You're not being honest. You're trying to virtue signal or whatever. What people want, all people want, are great stories well told. That's it. That's it. And more and more people, the more people we get, the more voices we get, the more different experiences we get that get to tell their original stories, I think we're better off. We all want great stories. And everyone will listen to a story. Stand-up comedy proves it. Nobody gives a fuck who the stand-up comedian is, not what color they are, not what sex they are, what gender they are, whatever. They just want good jokes. And if they laugh, it doesn't matter who's telling those stories or who's telling the jokes. That's what it's all about. And the same thing is true of storytelling. Give people great stories, and you'll always win in the end. You be honest to the story you're telling, and you have your collaborators and whoever it is you have telling those stories with you. As long as you're honest, as long as you're true to the characters and the stories, you will never lose. I mean, you have to be talented and a great storyteller. But as long as you're true to the story you're telling, and as long as you're true to those characters, your audience is going to know it, and they're going to go along with you. The problem is you have forces that are outside of the storytellers that are trying to tell storytellers what stories they're telling and what they have to do within the stories they're supposed to be telling. You can't win that way. What does a corporation know about storytelling? Nothing. Nothing. We need storytellers that are true to the stories they're telling and true to the characters that they're telling stories about. Once you do that, you're all good. And on that note, on this late night stream, I want to thank Alan, and I want to thank Miss Yuen. I mean, Lana. I love her reviews. Thanks for the work you both do. It's fantastic. I want to thank everybody for watching the channel. I want to thank people for supporting this channel and via Super Chats and members. You will have a membership call next week. That'll be fun. And on that note, thank you, Tom Jr. Jackson, for being the moderator that you are. And we'll have fun on the Burnettwork this week. I look very forward to it. And on that note, remember, as I'm drinking out of my... I feel like I've been drinking out of this Avatar, this light up Avatar Way of the Water. Oh, I think the battery burned out. Well, remember this week, the 4K of both Avatar and Avatar The Way of Water come out, which is exciting. So anyway, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to everyone, have a better night. Oh, wait. Hang on a second. Let me come back. I'm not done yet. Wait a second. The Fantasmagorium show said, we know right now that the Repoverse reigns supreme, the most amazing comic book maker that no one knows. Well, for those of you who don't know, Eric July, who created the Repoverse, and his first book, Isom, Eric July did something really interesting. He made a 96-page graphic novel that he already made it, financed it himself, and then when it was ready to go, then he did a Kickstarter to support the Repoverse and made, what, $4 or $5 million? $4 million? And he did a great job. So mad props to Eric July for putting his money where his mouth is, finding great collaborators, and telling the story that he wanted to tell. So that's the kind of creativity I can get behind. And I think when creators are selling something directly to their audience and they have been honest about the stories and the characters, they achieve that kind of success. So kudos to Eric July and kudos to the Repoverse. And again, I would encourage everyone to check that out. Phantasmagorium show is correct. I think that is the future. And I think you did a great job. Once again, live long and prosper.